There you go. At
Couple
2.
hours from now.
Perfect. Raise your hand. Great.
Couple hours from
Thank you
now.
very much for that answer.
The time is 5 o'clock Eastern time. It's 3 o'clock here. 2 hours. T minus 2 hours to spring.
That's somebody's gonna tell the weather then.
That's what we were saying.
Well, it was on Saturday, definitely.
Okay, so welcome to our Board of Commissioners meeting for 1 p.m. Monday, March 20th, 2023. We do have a new audio microphones here, so before the microphones are on that wall and people would hear somebody just moving a piece of paper like in the spot you're sitting, but I think we're all set for a little bit of balance in the room. So the first item is department, so citizen input. So is anybody here for citizen input today? Seeing none. First item is department performance measures updates for Q2.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioners. Director Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager. Today we have Q2 performance measure updates from some departments. Each quarter, we're going to come before the board with updates from departments to give you a snapshot of some progress that's being made on implementation of performance measures. So the board has set 5 goals, and each quarter will provide updates on 1 or 2 of those goals. For this quarter, we are providing updates on performance measures that fall under the goal of safe communities. We have 4 departments here today who will be providing a snapshot of the work being done to meet the objectives that fall under that goal. So first up, we will hear from the 911 department. We have Chris Perry and Megan Craig who will be providing an update on the 988 system. Chris and Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Commissioners, for having us. Reporting out to you on our performance measure, which is to develop partnerships with existing and future behavioral health crisis programs locally and statewide alongside local law enforcement to implement a more effective response and service delivery to mental health crisis, which is based on the BOCC objective, as she said, provide safe and secure communities through coordinated public safety and crisis management services. So Megan and I want to report out today on behalf of 911. Megan and myself have been meeting and working with behavioral health staff for the last, since November, bi-weekly, to develop a procedural plan for call handling, how that might look to gracefully hand off mental health crisis calls to an MCAT clinician, or maybe even transfer those to 988. I'm happy to report that we have a firm draft procedure completed now. But we know there'll be evolutions to how this will look in the future, but we have a good solid starting point for May 1st go live. Various staff members on both teams have been working to acquire portable radios for the crisis response team, and also facilitating training for those teams so they can use that equipment. We've also been, both teams have been working together to make sure that the appropriate criminal justice training and certifications are in place for those crisis team members, as we'll be sharing our CAD system, and there's some sensitive data in those systems, so we're making sure that everybody has that. And I think as of this morning, we saw that that was completed for all members. Both teams are also planning to do some hypothetical and real world training in April before our May 1st go live. We've also had the pleasure of having the crisis team members in our center for some sit-alongs to see kind of the nuts and bolts of how calls flow in, how we enter them in the system, and how we might hand those off to the crisis team. And we're going to reciprocate very shortly and go over to the stabilization center and make sure we have a good understanding and some relationships built with those members before we start. So we're still working out some of the finer details, but we have a really great starting point, procedure in place, and we're continuing to meet with leadership with that crisis team weekly. We have a meeting again this week, so we're charging forward. Any questions for Megan or I? We're happy to answer them.
I know that behavioral health and 911 have very carefully been sorting through data to try to parse out, what slice of the 911 calls would be appropriate to dispatch over to the MCAT, and coming up with processes to be able to separate those out. Do you have any feel at this point in time for that component of 911 calls, like how large that will be? Like, is it a couple calls a week, or
I don't think that we do. Part of our new procedural plan is to develop some mechanics so we can report out data more accurately than we can today, because those type of crisis calls can fall under many different call descriptions that we can't easily data mine. So I think we think it's going to be more than is expected. But until we get going and establish some new data reporting guidelines for how we enter calls, we won't exactly know. So I have a rough guess. Multiple a week for sure.
So I know we have our quarterly meetings with public safety leadership, so this probably be another aspect in our meeting even, which we can update each other on, all the people that attend that leadership meeting. And then also I'm just thinking, use us, use me for letting the world know as it's coming online, what we can do to help the community understand what's going on. Yeah. Any thoughts, Commissioner?
No, I'm glad that you've been working together. Sounds like seriously, you're gonna be ready, what, May 1st?
Plan.
Oh, that's great. And I was just talking to Sarah earlier about you're still short 7 employees in 911. And that's such a worry because summer's coming and I know your capacity, goes up at least 50% in the summer on a daily basis?
Roughly,
And
as
so,
much as 50.
yeah, so anyway, no, I thank you for this teamwork.
One other question, so I know that 988 is not so new or not so old itself. So how has the integration of that into the 911 call center worked? And does that cause any wrinkles with moving forward with this mobile crisis approach to some of the calls that are coming?
I think we're viewing it as another tool for us that we haven't had before. We've developed some criteria for what the crisis team can and can't handle. And the can't part would be those calls that we would move to 988. So we're still working that out. We're not doing that today, but the plan is to start sending those calls to 988 that fall outside of the criteria of the crisis team's purview to them. So all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
We're trying our best with what we know to develop criteria that get the crisis call to the right person that can help them best. That's all of our goals, whether it be law enforcement or the local crisis team or 988.
So if someone, like right now, if someone picks up their phone and dials 988, I mean, is it going somewhere else before it comes to you, or?
Yeah, it goes to a call center that has specially trained folks for those type of crisis calls. And if there is a law enforcement need, then they'll transfer those to us and then we'll handle that like we normally would. We're just working out how if we are the first person to take those calls, how we can send those to 988 after we've identified that that's the best fit. So that's the plan.
Where is that? Where are the 988 calls going to?
There are call centers with trained clinicians all over the US, but there are some in the West Coast and a couple in Oregon. And the stabilization center, the MCI team, is using the same company that is staffing 988. So it would be not much change of business. They've already been supporting us locally with those kind of calls.
Well, thank you very much. So next will be community development. For the same safe communities objective.
All right, next up, excuse me, I'm jumping a little bit. Next up, we have Angie Havnier from Community Development. Angie.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning, I'm Angie Havner, Administrative Manager. Here to talk to you about performance measures. First
Great
one.
to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you all. First one was the performance measures for code compliance that achieve 90% voluntary compliance in code compliance cases. Our target is 90%. We met that at 91.5%. That just shows generally our communities receives our program well. People most likely want to comply with voluntary compliance, and that's always the goal. Second one, performance measure was achieving 85% resolution of code compliance cases within 12 months. Target on that is 85%. We missed that at 67%. There's a couple different reasons for that. The biggest one is just staffing, retention, and training. Really puts us back when we lose a staff member. They have an average of 100 cases. So when they leave and then we're retraining, that was the biggest component to that number. Currently, we were fully staffed. We just lost a staff member last week. That position has been posted and we have interviews next Monday.
it's amazing, the employment, it's just coming, it's a churn right now, and we can all see it. So, thanks for setting a good culture and a welcoming environment, because, we're gonna be looking for the next person, just like we mentioned, 911 call taker, same situation. It's a good job. Not for everybody, kind of like this too, code enforcement's not gonna be for everybody either, but there's somebody out there that wants to do that.
Absolutely. We did have strong candidates, so I'm hopeful for our next position.
Is there any kind of trade-off between these two goals? I mean, getting voluntary compliance at high levels of that is really good. Getting prompt compliance is also good. And I mean, if you were, I believe that we try to be very collaborative
Absolutely.
and supportive of people as they try to achieve voluntary compliance. But if you, if compressing the time to compliance was a really high priority, would there actually be a trade-off between those two things, or?
I think it goes kind of twofold. The compressing the time, we have changed our program within the last year to do some efficiencies for that. Really strong communication on the front end, really clear timelines. Some of it's just an educational piece. They weren't really sure that they were in a violation. So that has worked. In addition to that, we've implemented more additional use of our voluntary compliance agreement, which that is the homeowner signing an acknowledgement that they're in violation. There's a precise plan to come into compliance, but that can be per our policy and procedures manual up to a year. So that is also part of that component. And just so you understand that we measure this from the date that the complaint is received to the date that it comes into compliance. And so part of this is the case may take a couple months to come into compliance, but it sat there just because of staffing to be assigned. We do pull fire life safety complaints first and make sure those are prioritized. Also, wetlands cases are pulled and if work is currently going on, we pull those to stop what's happening. So kind of a trade-off there. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Well, I think I know the case that's causing you to be at 67%. Because I've been taking pictures of it every July, and we're coming up on that anniversary again, and I'm really hopeful that something fire-wise safety could be accomplished with that case that's ruining your percentage. And I thank you, you're wonderful.
Ones that stay open for a long time, you're saying.
They do. That one is undergoing daily fines, so we're trying with that, but there's lots of components to it, including some mental health issues on that one, but understood, Commissioner.
I mean, oh gosh, but I so appreciate you because you get back to me on the weekends and you do an amazing job. So I hate that I appreciate that I have that side of your percentage, but the other side, I see how hard you work and I know how it looks like your team is really happy to be there. So I'm glad you've got some good candidates. Thank you.
The other thing that just worth highlighting briefly, knowing that you have a full agenda, is Angie's commitment and coordination with the sheriff's office, legal counsel, John Larity, and now with Stephanie Marshall is outstanding. Community justice as well. So the road department, as we've talked to the board about opportunities, for abatement when that time arises. So that's a testament to Angie's leadership and her team, and they're adapting and evolving in light of all these circumstances. The one thing that I didn't realize, and being in my position now for 18, 20 months, is just the legal process and procedures for code compliance. It really leans to the property owner. There's so many, understandably, rights that are afforded property owners. And so her team has to navigate process and procedures, and they do it quite well, but it's deliberately not an efficient system. I didn't realize that at the time, but now there's more awareness when you're involved in it, as I am just in a coordination role, but what her team deals with to try to be transparent and forthright, there's still these check marks that have to be met before, as you work your way towards progressive, not progressive discipline, but just ultimately to an enforcement action, whatever that might be.
How about that black plastic floating out from the neighbor's property? Are there a couple of those issues out there?
There is, but there's not as many as I was anticipating. Just, I think we're working on 2 right now.
Because
Yeah.
there was an email recently and I didn't forward it to it, but you might have heard about it, so I'll send you that.
Yeah.
About
Appreciate it.
the
Thank you.
neighbor's black plastic from previous farming attempts, you know, and
Yeah.
trying to probably be efficient with water,
Right.
but then there's just, it gets broken up and it's floating all.
So-
The sheriff's office, actually, they were destroying marijuana and they were destroying the black plastic at the same time. And I'm like, no, you cannot do that because then that plastic is flying over to the next door neighbor who's raising hay and you get that plastic in there and it's a whole other story. So I had to call them about 4 times because somebody kept calling me about the black plastic. So yeah, it's just all those little things that you don't realize that are really critical for agricultural operations that are legit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every case is very multifaceted.
Well, and code enforcement, the goal is just a safe, healthy community, good neighbor relations. But yeah, when somebody needs help or making some really bad choices on their private property, it's time to, get engaged. So thank you for what you do and the staff on it.
Absolutely. Thank you for your support and time today.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Tanner Wark from Community Justice. I'll turn it over to you to introduce your measure and provide an update.
Okay, great, thank you. My name is Tanner Wark. I am the Deputy Director of Community Justice over the Adult Division. We have 2 metrics that we're going to report out on today. And it's under reduced crime recidivism through prevention, intervention, supervision, and enforcement. So first measure to speak to is supervised adults receive criminogenic risk assessments within 60 days of the admission. So what that means is when we receive them to our office, we do an intake. We have 60 days to do based on high and medium risk offenders, criminogenic risk assessment. Our target is 75%. We hit 72%. That number is actually a really good number, even at 72% statewide, I will say. We're kind of at the top of the counties, if you will, that are hitting this metric that is designed by Oregon Administrative Rule. Any questions on that metric?
What kind of overhead to get that completed? So somebody comes in under supervision.
We have a challenging population to work with, and so that's our first
So
obstacle.
a willing participant.
That's correct. So they
Okay.
come in for intake and then that second visit. So if they're an individual that's hard to get into the office, that's going to diminish that number. I'll say our metric also includes a wider bandwidth of individuals than the state does because we have some misdemeanors in there that were funded. That we also include exactly like any of the felony individuals we supervise. So
Well, that's good to understand. So that number is in this
it-
total.
correct. So if we look at it as purely state OAR group, our number is actually, I think I checked right before, it was like 78%. So we're pretty excited about that. We're doing a lot of work. Our staff have been doing a great job. It used to be 90 days. And recently has been, it's in the process of being changed to 60 days. So
And a couple open positions.
not
Not too
on the officer side now.
Yeah,
So that's
good,
good.
okay.
That helps that number.
Good.
I was gonna ask about after 60 days. As you got 72% at 60 days and when you get out to 90 days or, what do the numbers look like?
We are at 13.62%. That is greater than 60 days. I didn't look at what that was like. Is it 62, 63 days or is it 90 or wouldn't be that far out after 100 something because it's based on a quarter. And then some are just not done. Those individuals could also be in custody, still serving their sentence before they come to us. So if they get convicted, say 90 days jail. So there could be a component of that. That's what the state's also trying to filter through to see what is that magic percentile statewide, because it most likely will never be 100%.
Right. But for the ones that you can get done, and eventually, shortly after 60 days, you've gotten those.
Correct. Yes.
That's great.
If they're coming in the office, the goal is they need to get that risk needs assessment done ASAP so we can develop a case plan. Which brings us to our next metric. All adult POs ensure supervised adults have active and updated behavior change plans. So the behavior change plans, our target with that was 75%. For Q2, we were at 76%. That's the activity that when the person comes in and we're actually working some casework with that depending individual based off their demographic. Again, the OAR, I believe, is updated every 6 months. We set ours at every 30 days. And that clock starts every single 30 days. They have a dashboard that all officers look at for high and medium risk offenders. And so the POs are gauged off of that metric. Any questions?
Oh, Tanner, I'd just like to say, a week ago Sunday, I was at Mountain View High School and there was actually crime that had happened, I believe there Friday night. 2 vehicles were destroyed all the way around with their windows. And then there was actually like an excavator, backhoe or something that had been damaged too. And that piece of equipment, you know, supported like 3 families.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was amazing because we drove in and we didn't see it. And then when we were leaving, we're going like, oh, how did we miss that? And it was actually, you know, a crime scene that they left taped up. But when you see that and you think all that damage, and now we're hearing that people have to not leave their keys in their cars, don't leave your purse out accessible. I mean, there's all these rules that our community needs to get a lot more aware about in order to keep your vehicle safe. I think we had over 1 million cars stolen last year in the country.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of, you know, can't get to work, you can't get your kids to school, you know, there's a whole another story there. So, but to see that just at the back of Mountain View, that was really incredibly, it was frustrating, I'm sure.
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, my remaining question about this performance measure is, so we've got a pretty good level of active and updated behavior change plans. You know, the question that I think would follow that is, well, how do people do with you know, making progress with their plans? Are there metrics for that we'll see at some point, or?
Yes, that's a very complicated because you're dealing with human nature and everybody has a different time set, right? And everybody who comes in based off their needs and what their risk is and how they skill building exercises. And the whole field is trying to get more in tune with skill building, to be honest. So it becomes an evidence-based office visit, if you will. So it's not just going to treatment, it's also coming to see the PO and get some skill building. So all outcomes on that is still is up in the air, I guess. I mean, we know where the target is, we know where we're going. Yes, it's yeah, there's a lot to that metric. But I would anticipate seeing that in the next couple of years as far as the state developing some kind of metric for that.
So for the risk assessment, does that move a lot, like quarter to quarter, or are we kind of at that 72% level, or should we be making sure above 75?
It's pretty good at that 75%. We kind of shot from the hip to throw that number out there, just to be honest, because we're one of 6 counties that have dashboards that can watch this every 24 hours, it updates. So we have a lot more ability here, which is great. And the POs have been able to respond because they get that information sooner and because that clock resets. So March 1st, all their charts are red. And a lot of my officers do not like to see red on their charts. And so they try to turn them green. And so part of that is getting everybody on your caseload that's available. Not everybody's available. That's where the complication gets in. The person abscond or is he in a short jail sanction or something like that.
So the 75 is a good reach target then, just a little bit, yeah. Keeps everybody busy.
Keeps it, yes.
Good.
It wasn't going to be lowered, that's
Yep.
for sure. If anything, we will continue to push.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tanner.
Thank you.
Great. And finally, we have Kathleen Meehan Cook from the District Attorney's Office.
Hello, thanks for joining
Hi
us.
there, thank you. I actually brought a couple slides based upon our performance measures. I thought it might be helpful since ours are very recidivated based. But thank you for having us speak today. Next one, please. So our two programs are very unique and a little different, but our first one that we're going to talk about today is our Veterans Intervention Strategy. And that's specifically our performance measure. We were basing it off of the most current research we could find for veteran treatment courts. And although our program isn't exactly a veterans treatment court, it follows many of the evidence-based practices. Yes.
So yeah, Veterans Treatment Court and the Drug Court, it just maybe mixing some stuff up here, but it was all over the media. Drug court goes away, and now we're trying to do this Veterans Court. People say, oh, we don't have a Veterans Court, but we do have these Veterans Intervention Services. And to say it was kind of a shame last week where Deschutes County doesn't have the drug court anymore. So people started asking me about that. It's like, oh, that's not quite our domain.
No, that is really, it's unfortunate. The one advantage now with our veteran treatment court is actually, our veterans intervention strategy, are the courts as of January are now involved in the program, which is fantastic. I think it's a great added element, but it still doesn't fit that traditional definition. So, but it's much more court involved than it has been in the past.
Well,
yeah.
Is there a announcement about that the courts are going to be involved? I mean, because maybe that's a good step for veteran advocates to understand too.
Yeah,
As
we
I said,
haven't
just
made
last
a
week,
big
somebody
announcement
said
about
that.
it, but we probably could move in that direction, yeah.
Right.
All the gentlemen that are involved in the program, they're all excited that that element has been added. So yeah, we can probably look at doing that.
I show up to help promote.
Okay, good. And what we ended up doing, so when we looked at that study, it said 14% of participants in veteran treatment courts experienced new incarceration. Our target number was a little higher than that because a lot of the programs that were evaluated in that only allowed misdemeanors. And they also only allowed individuals into their program that were honorably discharged. We allow people that have been dishonorably discharged as well as felonies into our case or into our program. And so, the next slide. As of our quarter two, we were at 14%. Our numbers are still fairly small, so one person can make a big change. It's actually dropped down to now 12.5% of individuals that have been reincarcerated. So we've had one individual that's been reincarcerated. We've enrolled 18 individuals into the program. They're enrolled for a full year. Their program year versus their recidivism year is a little different. The recidivism year is based upon when they committed that first crime that enrolled them in the program. It usually takes a couple months to get somebody actually into the program. But we've had 7 people who graduate so far. 2 have been revoked due to non-compliance, or when specifically one committed a crime that could not keep them in. And we have 9 that are active. We've had 2 gentlemen that have been in the program that committed another crime, so there were additional arrests, but their situation and the crime was very related to their substance or mental health issue. And we're still working with them. One of them has since graduated, and the other one is still enrolled and working toward graduation, but is making progress.
I'm not tracking what revocation means. Does that mean they graduated and then?
No, actually, in this case, they were still actually enrolled in the program. So you can be revoked. Somebody who's revoked is actually, they committed or done something, didn't follow the program plan, or committed another crime that required them to be removed from the program, and they entered back into the traditional criminal justice system.
So is that considered recidivism, or only if someone's incarcerated again?
If they've been arrested, so in this particular arc, there's multiple categories that you can track recidivism. It can either be at the arrest, at conviction, or incarceration. So we're basing it off the number for that. It's on that study that looks at incarceration, but that's like the farthest down the line. We also internally track the arrest rate as well, because that's something of interest to us, and that's the most immediate. But we don't necessarily always revoke somebody from the program just because of an arrest if we think that they've been making progress and this is a slip up that can be supported.
So who's the most tangible connection for the person that's involved in the program? As in, it isn't just a piece of paper and here, go do these things. Who's gonna?
So we work very closely with the vet center. And the vet center also has mentors who are also veterans that meet with the active participants on a regular basis. And the veterans come back to at least a meeting once a month, which is either at the vet center or now every other month it's at the courthouse in front of Judge Miller. So there's a lot of content, and they all have treatment plans that are put together that require them to go to support meetings as well as specific treatment meetings based upon their individual needs. And those all occur at the vet center. Well, at least their support meetings occur at the vet center. Some of their treatment meetings, depending, could be at the VA, the vet center, or other service providers in the community. So.
This is so wonderful. I remember we were talking about this a couple of years ago, and we were still short of judges in order to really bring it here, but what you're saying is really successful. And then our Veterans Village actually has had 12 people transition to permanent housing today, and that's where they can be there up to 2 years. And so I feel like we are making a difference for those veterans, and I thank you so much for all you're doing.
Well, this is a great program, and it's showing success. I mean, our numbers are still small, but I definitely feel like we're trending in the best direction.
Yes.
And then our next slide deals with our emerging adult program. And the information I have for you right now is based upon the pilot, which is concluded. We did get funding. We got a little over $1.1 million that we're within the county as well as our partners to expand into phase 2. But our metric for that program, specifically for the pilot, was we were comparing it against the state recidivism numbers, which are 18 to 30-year-olds, individuals that are eligible for the program are 18 to 24. But our goal was to have 35% or less of these individuals recidivating. We have a very small N, but if we go to the next slide, we have had really great results where everybody has now graduated. Every crime, similar to the veterans program, your entry date into the program for how long you participate versus your date of your original crime, which is based upon the recidivism rate, don't necessarily align, but all of the young adults who engaged have had their crime that's been over a year. So we do have a final number on that. We had a 7.7% recidivism rate. We enrolled 11. We graduated 13. The 2 that were revoked were both due just to non-compliance, but one of those individuals who was revoked due to non-compliance has since committed another crime, but no one else has. So we're pretty excited about that. And so we're really excited about the next phase of the program. We have 7 young adults enrolled so far, and our target is 50 over the next 2 years. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Any questions?
I'm forgetting the emergency adult or the emerging adult program is it federally funded? Is that federally funded?
No, state Criminal Justice Commission funding. It came out of I'm forgetting the state bill.
but yeah, where I'm going with this is just trying to assess kind of the certainty of continuity of funding. Is the program securely funded for multiple years?
We have technically the grant, the timing of when this grant came out technically ends at the end of December 2023. However, we got the funding very late, over a year after the grant was supposed to have potentially started. So we've spoken with the Criminal Justice Commission. They know we're going to apply for a no-cost extension. So our plan is, and everything is mapped out to December 2024 for us to complete the program. We do know that the Restorative Justice Coalition, which is the group that got the bill through, is pushing for another $4 million during this next cycle. And so we're waiting for that RFP to come out to kind of plan for future funding options. It will be a little more challenging going forward to get additional funding because there'll be more counties that are applying. Some of them this time applied for planning grants. Well, we actually have a program that we're implementing. Some applied for pilots. So there will be more competition in that grant process going forward.
Well, when I'm not sure if that's probably, they're probably not talking about continued funding for the program this legislative session.
They are.
Or they are.
Yes. I think the original plan, they wanted to ask for 10 million and they've scaled it back to the 4 million, which matches how much we got for this session.
Looking at Jen, and I'm wondering if we can
Big
Flag
note.
this. For our
See
legislators.
it coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Any questions? I think we're completed with our performance.
All set.
Okay, great,
Good
thank you.
time, good to take time and look at the big picture. Item number 2, update on Redmond safe parking program.
Afternoon, for the record, Krista Follinger, Deschutes County Property Management. We also have with us today Rick Russell and Sarah Hopper with Mountain View Community Development, also Redmond City Council Member Catherine Osborne. So what we wanted to do today is just brief the board on Redmond Safe Parking Program. So to go back a little bit in time, in early November of 2022, your board approved ground lease with Mountain View Community Development, which would provide for safe parking on county-owned property in East Redmond on Southeast 7th and Southeast Evergreen. That consists of 2 properties and 1.07 acres. The original or the initial lease was to be for a 90-day trial period. And because of some challenges with Mountain View acquiring the required insurance, the first participants did not mobilize until about the first week of January. So therefore, through support of County Council and administration, we extended the lease for an additional month just to get a fuller 90-day trial period. So Rick and Sierra are here to provide an update. So with that, I'll hand that over to them.
Should I introduce myself? Rick Russell, and serve in 2 capacities, the pastor of Mountain View Fellowship and then the executive director of Mountain View Community Development.
Sierra Hopper, I'm the program director for safe parking.
We have a couple of slides and I'll talk you through. Some of this will be a review. The first is a map of the property, Southeast 7th and Southeast Evergreen, the 2 lots there. If you go to, right there. As you recall, we did a series of neighbor outreach letters and then some door knocking, and Commissioner Dare is familiar with that.
Is that where the little dog got?
Yeah, that's where the
Okay,
puppy
yeah.
got out.
Oh,
I knew my life was over.
Oh, no.
so
Disaster
scary.
was averted.
Yeah.
Yes, Christy was there with me.
She tackled it, it was great.
No, I laid on the ground so the dog would.
Oh, my gosh.
We're just disappointed there weren't photos. If you could go to the next slide, just a basic again of the services. So to keep things safe and sanitary, we provide porta potties, we have garbage service there. We have electric power via solar or quiet generators. We create individual plans with folks on gray water and black water. Each person has a different plan, but our case managers are familiar with those. If you go to the next slide, our case management provides multiple check-ins per week on the property. Sierra's driving by it just about every day. We have video cameras out there as well, and those have been a very helpful tool. Volunteers there as well throughout the week. Action plans, just want a brief summary of what
Yeah.
case management typically looks like.
Yeah, everyone, has their own plans because everyone comes to us in a different part in their life. But typically, obviously, everything's housing focused. So regardless of if they need a driver's license or car insurance, everything has at least a housing focused goal. That's the overarching goal. So, and that looks different for everyone too. They could just want to connect with a family member to get into housing again, or go to a shelter or get actual stable, secured low-income housing. Another thing we work on is we work with Mosaic a lot to get people that are coming to us secured healthcare. So whether that means they don't have OHP or they just don't have a primary care doctor, we'll help them get that. Employment support, so helping people write resumes, driving them to their interviews, that kind of stuff. We'll supply and have been supporting people in that. Assistance, like I said, with IDs, birth certificates, vehicle registration, and insurance. And there are other programs like Neighbor Impact that will pay for those things too. So we work with other agencies to get those things paid for while we support them.
A few updates since we were with you last. If you could go to the next slide. So we do have 4 vehicles there, 4 family units. 2 of the vehicles are couples. I am requesting of the Board of Commissioners is if you would consider extending the lease not only for a year, but also from 4 vehicles up to 6 vehicles. We feel as though we have the space there to do that. It's been operating safely and quietly so far. A few other updates. The city of Redmond just recently, last week, passed as part of their time, place, and manner ordinances, creating a no unauthorized camping within 500 feet of a safe parking site. And that's a new development that I imagine that goes into place 30 days after they voted to do that last week. And you'll see why that will actually come in handy here in just a moment. We have had 1 call to law enforcement. I checked in with Redmond PD. It was not related to someone in our program or on our property. It was an unauthorized RV that had shown up about a block away. And again, this is where that ordinance is helpful to, because we often hear concerns from neighbors of, oh, if we say yes to safe parking, what's to prevent, this becoming a magnet for other folks? We haven't really seen that happen, but just as a reassurance, there's another tool in our tool belt to say no unauthorized camping within 500 feet. We have had 4 complaints from the closest neighbor. So 1 neighbor, all related to speed on the gravel road in front of his house. 3 of those instances we knew because we have video cameras and we could see. It was not extreme, but he felt it was too fast. We reached out to them and we let him know, hey, please be careful, please be slow. We put signage out there as well, and we haven't had any further complaints since that. If you go to the next slide, I thought it might be helpful for you to see where people were prior to coming to the site. So you'll see that in green, 7th and Evergreen, and then in yellow, you'll see 5 different vehicles that were kind of camped around town in an unauthorized way. So there are 4 vehicles there. We've had a 5th person who was there for a short time. His employment moved to Bend, and so he moved on, and we put a 4th, filled that space again. So you can see we had someone there by the overpass, Highway 97 in Canal, someone, as we would say, out in the Junipers off of 17th, someone by the Subway restaurant, a couple by the grocery outlet, and then someone who was referred from the winter shelter at our location, Mountain View Fellowship. So this is where people were, and I like to show this because it's hard to show. I could drive you to those locations and show you that there's not an RV there anymore. And it doesn't really look like much, but I want to remind you that these folks were scattered about the community and now they're in a safe location where they're able to get access to services and to move on and find employment and other things.
4 corners of Redmond.
Yeah, it really is all
Yeah.
spread out.
Could you go to the next slide as well? So this is how this safe parking site fits in with the larger picture. So in green, you'll see 3 operating safe parking sites. In yellow, you will see 2 sites that are not operating yet, but they've got to a yes. We just have some things to work through in order for them to come online and for us to host participants there. And then you'll see in orange, a series of locations that we are in process with right now. We feel good about. These are, I wouldn't call them aspirational. I'd say these are just in the process of getting approved, including, I'll note there at the bottom of the fairgrounds, which we've had some discussion about with Fair Board in public meetings as well as here. And so if those sites come online, that gets us from 11 spaces where we are today to 39 spaces. And I am hopeful and optimistic that most of these come online by this summer. The last thing I would add, to speak to county's considering an ordinance, or should we? Chris, so I understand the county in conversation with Eric Croft is considering a safe parking ordinance. And so you didn't ask for my input, but I'd like to give it to you all the same. This is what I prefer to see the county do when this policy is being renewed. I think this program can work well in churches, businesses, farms, service organizations. I understand there may be some land use issues that limit it to urbanized areas, but I would encourage you to allow this program to operate as widely around the county as possible. Just about any kind of property can work well for this. Obviously, I'm not a land use expert, so you have those in-house, but if it cannot just be limited to urbanized communities. I would encourage the county to consider operating this much like the city of Redmond operates it, which is that there's in the city, there's a city office or employee who issues a permit, who is really the check-in person for our program. At the city of Redmond, it's the community development department. For here, we work a lot with Christy and the county property management office. And so she knows our program inside and out, knows the county terrain well, and I would recommend that to you all. I think the existing policy that both the city of Bend and the city of Redmond have to not exceed 6 vehicles without a vote by you, I think it's a good policy, an effective one. And I would urge you to consider also creating a no camping ordinance around 500 to 1,000 feet of these sites as well. So again, that's a later issue, but wanted to share that with you. You want to share on the type of folks who are there, and then we asked Councillor Osborne to share. She's had some interaction with some of our participants, and we're used to being prepared for anything in this type of meeting, so we've come with a lot of tools here.
A lot of things. So I actually gave you guys a handout too that just kind of lists the stories of all the people that we currently have, you know, while keeping their anonymity. But the first one is a couple that we moved out of the Junipers off Antler and 17th, which we saw on the map there. They had been living unhoused there for multiple years. The gentleman has been full-time employed throughout the entire time of being homeless. And is currently still employed. The female was unable to work due to staying home in their trailer to ensure the trailer wasn't getting broken into and that kind of stuff. And now that they're both in safe parking within 1 week, she was able to get a job and and is working full time. They're on top of a list for an apartment and working towards reunification with their children. And their children are currently staying with a family member. The next one is a male was moved from near the Kingwood off-ramp location, which I think was also on there too. He's working with Case Management Weekly to obtain housing and employment. He's actually has an interview tomorrow, so that's pretty exciting. He just told me this morning. And then his 90-day date is April 16th. Another male was moved from Southwest Juniper Avenue near Highland. That was the one near Subway. He has a full-time job and has the entire time he's been homeless as well, and is working with Case Management and other local resources to secure stable housing. He needed just as basic as like his driver's license and things that he got mugged while he was living homeless in Madras. So he lost all of his belongings, so we had to help him get those back. Other couple that we moved from Redmond Grocery Outlet parking lot, the male's working full-time and has been throughout their time homeless as well, and the female's disabled, receiving income via disability. They're working with Case Management and other resources to obtain secure and stable housing prior to June 1st. And this is their first time, even though they've been homeless for about 6 years, this is their first time working with a social service agency towards securing housing. So they're not known to any agency within homelessness, which is quite outrageous. The last one is a fellow service provider who was living out of their vehicle, and he's the gentleman that was working and then transferred to Bend for work. Therefore, he left the program. He was given resources for the Bend safe parking though when he left. So, yeah. That's any questions about any of the?
Is that the gentleman that I met?
I think you
No.
met the gentleman who came off of King, off of Canal and Highway 97.
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. No, this wasn't the person you met. He was only in our program for about a week, but he works for another social service agency. Yeah. Yep.
So what are you referring to with the 90-day date?
So everyone has a 90-day date when they enter our program, and we can extend that if they're working towards their goals. If they're not, then they're asked to leave. That's just to hold everyone accountable that they're actually working towards their goals. And we have yet.
That date real quick up front.
They do, yep. They know it's on all their paperwork. Every time we talk, we mention it. So yeah. Any other questions?
I asked, sorry to be from the second one, but I asked, I'll scoot up.
Scoot you here.
I asked Catherine Osborne as a representative of the city. They've been a good partner on this, but Catherine's also just had some firsthand experience and could probably personalize, even just briefly, what it looks like out there. So do you want to share your experience?
So I spent quite a bit of time in the community at 7th and Evergreen, and I just want to start out off by it as a community. And I do that not as a city member, it's because I have friends who are living there right now and I hope I can do their story justice. But we are both, let's call my friend Jill, because
because we like to talk about Jack and Jill and the junipers. But people often ask Jill how she ended up friends with a city councilor, and they ask me how I ended up friends with a homeless person. It's because neither of us were those things when we met. Years and years ago, both of our husbands worked together in the wildland fire industry. We were pregnant at the same time. Our children are the same age, and during fire seasons, we would do play dates and getting all tingly, sorry. And she was a very young mom that the more experienced moms and I would try to keep under our wings. And he did what some dads do. He left. And he left her with a special needs daughter and a baby. And no job, no driver's license, nothing. And that spiraled very, very quickly. And Jill and I stayed friends as I watched these trials and tribulations happen, because as she began to lose things, other services had to be called into place. You know, none of us are perfect. We've all made mistakes. Phone calls were made, and she was cleared, but it was too late. And she couldn't keep her apartment. She couldn't afford it. She went out into, she was living in an RV on the sidewalk, not the sidewalk, but on a street. The city asked that street to be cleared off, and the trailer was towed out into the junipers. My friend Jill is, it was towed by some friends. My friend Jill is very young and very small, and that is a very scary place to be. And so while out there, she had saved money and bought a generator. It was stolen. Saved money for a chainsaw. It was stolen. She was bear maced inside her trailer by who knows who. And that created some real anxiety and fear of leaving her home. And she, through the cooling shelter at Shepherd's house, started working very diligently to try to figure out a way out. She was terrified and she needed a way out. And Safe Parking Program has become that way out for her and her family. She did meet a gentleman who did work full-time, is still working full-time. That is his story. Her story is she was scared and she was vulnerable. And once she moved into the Safe Parking Program, it took about a week for her to realize she was okay to take a deep breath. And she took that deep breath and she filled her body with strength, and she went and got a job. She called me, she said, I need a ride. She's never been taught to drive. So I take her, we go fill out a bunch of applications. She does great in her interview. They hire her immediately. And one of the things that she did that I'm so proud of her for is she got a job in a place near other service providers, so she could put herself in a healthy environment where other wraparound services would be available to her, not just Safe Parking, but through other service providers. From there, they told her she needed a bank account. She's never had a bank account. She got a bank account and she got a savings account. And I can report she put pretty good sum of money in that first savings account, and she was really proud of it. I got a phone call. I've never had savings. Don't have a lot, but I've never had savings. The first deposit was $6. The next one was in the hundreds. From there, she went to the DMV. She got a license so that she could get those accounts and stuff. Not a license, but an ID. But she picked up the pamphlet to learn to drive. And so, like, within a week of having a stable, safe place to lay your head at night, you can get a job, you can get a bank account, you can get a savings account, you can get an ID, and you can call your friends up to bring a trailer to unload all the junk you've hoarded because you didn't have access. And you clean out your apartment, your RV, and you have pride in this good smelling cleaner she bought at Walmart. Let me tell you, it smelled good. She scrubbed that thing down. She told me she was wiping the literal dirt from the junipers out of her space. She did her laundry, and now she's like, I cook dinner at night. That wasn't something that could be done. The slide, that's because the slide was broken and all these things were messed up and there was no one to come fix them. And they were able to get people out there to improve their space. They also started improving their car for more reliable transportation. This is just a cycle. It spiraled down really bad And now it's slowly coming back up because we are giving people the opportunity. And so I just wanted to share that story. While we were out there unloading all that emotional and physical baggage from the Junipers into the trailer, I got to meet a couple of the neighbors too. And one of the gentlemen, I think senior citizen, disabled, was doing the same thing. Hey, will you take this out? I'm trying to improve and get a propane fridge for my trailer. I want to be able to have like groceries and stuff. You're like, wow, I didn't really think about that. Absolutely, throw the trailers, get that out of here. And then the other guy right down the road who came up to check on us, what are you doing? Why are you taking all their stuff out of their trailer? And he was telling us about his job. And if we see this truck, it's just them taking them to work. They're a community and they're taking care of my friend. And I hope that you will consider helping take care of everybody else's friends because they deserve a chance. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that story about what safe parking can do for someone.
We haven't been in the program that long. That's a lot to accomplish in the short amount of time they've been with us. And they've received minimal case management. They've done most of it on their own.
I believe some of you may have met them, so just we can discuss it later, but from the last time before they went into safe parking to where they are today, my heart is very full.
Thank you.
I know, I was thinking like the Kleenex box is way down there.
We've got it.
Anyway, that's why we love this program. Because we have the people that actually do amazing work or people help themselves, like what you're saying, Catherine. It's really, thanks for taking the time and sharing that with us because it's so important. And thank you, Rick, for never giving up on us and waiting for the vehicle, the ranger to show up and all those other things.
Yeah, where's that pickup, by the way?
Where is that? Did you get it?
No, we have not.
You have not gotten the ranger yet?
Not yet. We were talking about it though earlier.
Oh, please. Oh, my gosh. Well, any day now, I'm sure it's gonna show up, isn't it? Oh, please.
So this is an update to the 3-month lease. And is this official action today or?
No
what are you
official
thinking?
action, so if the board's supportive, we'll come back in
Yeah.
the next week with a consent
What
agenda item
direction to, okay,
to extend the lease for a year.
Can we increase them to 6 because it is over an acre and it is 2 lots?
Yes. If the board-
If there's support from the board.
Well, I just,
Functionally, there is room to,
Yeah, there's plenty of room there.
if I could ask a couple questions, both about the specific site and just about, thank you for giving kind of the profiles of some of the folks who are safe parking out at 7th and Evergreen right now. I'm curious, I historically you've had a wait list for the program. I mean, you have told us stories of people today who are very ready to make progress out of homelessness with the right spaces and supports to do so. Are the other people on the wait list, like are the people you told us about, are they typical to the people who you have on your lists, or were these with the best of the best?
No, actually, our wait list works through literally first come, first serve. So we don't pick and choose based on their stories. They're literally who gets sent to us and who qualifies for the program. And qualification is rather basic. You have to want housing, you have to have a vehicle to live out of and meet a few other little requirements. But no, this is the majority of the people we have are very similar to this. And yeah.
And how long is the wait list?
Well, our wait list works. It's hard.
Yeah, there's a little bit of nuance to waitlist because you need things to align at the same time. So our waitlist today, if we don't have a space for them now or tomorrow or the next day, if we call them back in a week, they may have moved on, they may have found something else. And so waitlist is a tricky thing to say, well, we've got 30 people on a waitlist. We often have, what would the number be?
I think typically we have about 10 people in waiting for a spot. Like, for example, someone moved out yesterday out of the program at Mountain View at the church, and we have their place is being filled again today. So we don't wait, we are constantly refilling the spaces. So even if our wait list has nobody, we find someone.
But you're not, when you talk to people, you're not saying like, oh, if you could wait 3 weeks, I'm gonna put you on a list. You are
No.
basically only kind of capturing their information if you
If
know.
we have a space for them.
There have been really 2 instances though, where we have been able to help, Sarah's been able to help someone on the wait list access other resources that got them into housing, and so.
Isn't that what happened with Kim?
No, she was in our program for about 3 months.
Oh, she was in the program, okay.
Yes, correct.
But I know she never, she's in a happy spot.
Yeah,
right?
she's
she's
good
a
now,
great
but we've had
student.
2 other instances. One where a lady called us saying, hey, I need safe parking, I'm living in my car, but the only reason I'm living in my car is because I can't afford the first and last and deposit for an apartment that I have lined up. And we said, oh, well, that's unacceptable, and we reached out to a resource that paid for all that for her, and she moved into housing. So, and that was OHP, so OHP has flex funds and they paid for it for her. So that was really helpful because we didn't even have to move her into our program. She went straight into housing and she called us, thankful that we gave her that resource. And then on Friday, I had someone do an intake with me who's also living out of their car. And that same day, they got an email that they were number 1 on a wait list, and we paid for their application, and they're at an interview today for it. So we help people even when they're not in our program, and it seems to work out for some. So, yeah.
The bottleneck is though, more sites. If we had more sites, we could place more people. We do have our second full-time case manager on board now, so our capacity is ready to go.
Yeah, so and a couple of questions to go back to this specific location. When we were deliberating on this, we heard lots and lots of concerns from neighbors. In the last 3 months, I haven't heard from anyone from that neighborhood that they're unhappy with the way that things are going. That doesn't mean that they aren't concerned, so they're just not contacting us. So I was wondering if you could speak to that. I mean, you mentioned the 4 concerns about vehicles going a little too fast, but I mean, is that, and then there was the one issue with somebody who parked their RV
Block away.
nearby. Is that pretty much it?
That is it. We have had we sent out a couple of emails to the email addresses we have for neighbors. We invited them to this meeting. We wanted to make sure they were aware that it was up for renewal at this meeting. We have not gotten responses to those. But we do have quite a bit of contact with that one neighbor in particular. He has my number, I have his.
And he has my number too.
He has.
I
Commissioner
said, if
Nair's
there's a
number.
problem, call me, you know.
Has he called you?
We just had one conversation and I said, please, we coordinated signs being put up on the street and everything that circled all around, and he has not called me back. So I said, save my number.
I think he has your number too as well, so.
Oh, yeah, probably. We actually ran into him on Friday we were at Neighbor Impact, and he mentioned that his only complaint is that people drive too fast. He has no other complaints. That's what he told someone at Neighbor Impact. So, and he's the immediate neighbor, so he would know if something was going on.
And any feedback or information from the Redmond police? Like, is there? I guess that was one of the other kind of fears that people had. When there are homeless people there, other people will be attracted there, and they'll cause problems, and there'll be illegal activity. I mean, is there? Is the Redmond police going out there for anything, or?
I spoke with Lieutenant Chambers, who tracks that data, and he confirmed for me there had been that one call about the RV that was a block away. And that RV disappeared after a week or so, within a week of that, of their own accord. They were not breaking any rules by being out there, so. But that was it. There've been no other police calls. We've had no other issues. We have a set of rules around, visitors and walking, cleaning up their pets and all that kind of stuff. And we've had really no issues with our participants there.
The fella who I had concerns about speaking, I think he also had concerns about road maintenance and people get trapped in the snow with wear and tear on the road. I mean, has he come back to any of those concerns, or is it just about how fast people are driving?
I think it's just very,
We've had some
very
snow.
protective of that gravel road. And
Yeah.
we get it. We have a very good and open relationship with them.
And there's been a good amount of snow, so we haven't had any issues. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that, hearing that it is going well with the neighborhood, that adds to my support for going from 4 to 6. That was, when you mentioned that, the one thing that came to mind was, well, I wonder how the neighbors are feeling about the program. Thank you for kind of elaborating on that. Not hearing any complaints, I think, is a pretty good sign.
Happy with that.
So this parcel was possibly going to be on a list to be auction list, sorry. And now it's being utilized for this purpose. And let's just acknowledge that it's an asset of the people of the county, that it could have been monetized. And that was why I was resisting it originally. Why don't we offer it to the world, see if somebody wants to buy it? So I'm just letting you know, I probably still would have gone there, but it's exciting to see this program online here right now. How about the revenue for the program? So I think it was American Rescue Plan dollars from the county that was a balloon payment to start, but what does that look like? So we're a couple months into it now, we're looking for another whole year. What is the finances?
So it roughly takes us about between $300,000 and $350,000 a year to operate everything we're doing. We right now have a funding runway of about 18 months. And we're talking with the city right now about additional funding for that. We're working with some of our state rep and some other folks at the state to, one of the challenges that we face for this program is that HUD and the state, by definition, will not consider an RV to be shelter. And our view of that is that it's just an outdated definition of what shelter is. They're actually fairly effective shelters and better than congregate shelters in many cases, especially for women or women with children. And so we're up against that barrier, but we are talking with both our state and federal representatives about what can be done about that. And that would help us be able to access longer term funding to make this a sustainable program.
I understand the parameters around the package that the governor and the state legislature just moved through. I mean, it would not cover safe parking because it's indoor shelter.
That's my understanding, although there appears to be some gray area that we are, wherever there's a crack, we will be in there trying to figure out how we can access resources for this program.
Cheyenne seemed to think that, things like pallet houses might actually be eligible. So I don't know if there's, that may not overlap the state parking.
I saw some information from the MAC, and I forget what that stands for with COIC, that seemed to possibly open the door to us a little bit, and we will be pressing into that.
So one of my thoughts is we have a coordinated homeless response office. We have representatives on that. And now, we're talking about the big picture for the safe parking program at the county level. So I'm just hopefully getting some buy-in from my other commissioners. Let's acknowledge that this is part of a bigger picture, bigger plan. We've been in this spot a few times now where people are coming to us with specific asks, lots of energy and emotion, and I mean, great work being done here. But if we're coordinating something, we have staff coordinating it, we're picking these things off one by one on the sides. And do you, my fellow commissioners, support the fact that I'd like to see, Cheyenne maybe endorsing this, writing up a recommendation, maybe through the coordinated response office?
Well, the really good news is I'm hoping Rick, maybe Sierra are going to go with me on Thursday. Catherine can't go because she has a commitment with her kids in school to Helping Hands. We're doing an hour-and-a-half tour of the Helping Hands program, and that program is now in 6 counties in the state. It has results and rules. Alan Evans does a great job, and he would love to come over here. And I really feel like I've invited people from all over Deschutes County to go on this tour to see another project that we could bring here, another part of the group that he worked with. And let's see, Classic County has 1.8 million of their Measure 110 funding going to the Helping Hands program in their county. So it looks like he can go at first low barrier, but then he actually wants to help people. So then he transfers over to Highbury. I'll forward the emails on all about it. But, and Mayor Fitch can go on Thursday, but he did read the board of directors and said that is an incredibly impressive group of people that are running that program. So, you know, with the safe parking, looking like it's, if we can get up to 39 spots and what you do, if we can do that, if we can bring Alan's program over here and do some more, you know, managed program and get Oasis Village, get our 10 acres going. We have a lot of really outstanding opportunities in Deschutes County.
So I asked a question about, is there support for having the coordinated homeless response
We had a meeting,
effort?
right, we had a meeting on Wednesday morning. And we did go over our budget, we went over the package. We didn't talk about it specifically, but several people that are on that group are gonna go on the tour for the Helping Hands program. And just to see what other things we can do, and then we have a 4-hour meeting coming up in April, maybe the 16th or something, it's pretty, anyway, we are gonna meet for 4 hours and we're really gonna dig through a lot of things. So I feel like, because they've got the MAC group and now they have our group, it's definitely challenging. I know Rick really, we all need to contact our legislators and tell them that RVs need to be part of this program. The fact that this money is supposed to go to new programs and not the ones already in existence, and the ones already in existence, if you read the literature, they're running out of funding. So that's not a healthy thing. So we need to reach out, and I bet we can make a difference with that funding. I just sent my 3rd email to the houseless director for the governor, and I finally heard back. But I had to send 3 emails, and that was over my RV parking spot, or my RV homes, the manufactured homes, excuse me. That took 3 emails to her office because I wasn't getting a hearing in the Senate. And yet, what do we need more than anything in Deschutes County but workforce housing? So, yeah, it's circling around. Representative Held was giving me some good advice, just ran it by Doug Riggs. And apparently we could do an amendment, maybe in the House, for that project. But it's right by the RV, you know, our 500 acres of county land, except it happens to sit off of Highway 97. So it's not like people that drive up and down 97 are gonna see a manufactured home park. But it's back there, and it's really an incredible opportunity for people that work that can actually buy their home and at least get started with appreciation and equity in the real world. So I know it's complicated. Come to the 4-hour meeting if you have some input for that. Do we have a date? Do you know?
April 20th?
It's 20th,
This is
okay.
the MAC or this is?
No, this is the
coordinated
coordinated,
homeless response?
right,
April 20th.
April 20th, 4 hours. It's from 10 to 2.
I wanted to respond to your question, but also just to speak to this. The changes we're talking about now to the state package, these are some of the reasons why I wanted us to engage with House Bill 2001 earlier in the process, so we could ask for some of the things that would make the legislation and the funding better and more suited for our community. So I hope that we'll just keep that in mind in the future. Like when packages are moving, we know that they've got legs. We can actually engage to make them better for us. So just wanted to say that. But then to the question of, you know, I guess I'm trying to understand whether you're asking whether the coordinated homeless response office should control things or kind of track things and report to us, kind of like keep us updated, or what exactly are you proposing? Because I mean, I don't, you know, we talk on a regular basis about limited government and, like, you know, keeping big government out of the way of people who are doing stuff in the private sector. And you know, this is an example of, you know, people in the private philanthropic or faith sector who are doing really amazing things in our community, like coming up with solutions to the problems that we have. And then, coming to us at a certain point where resources, land or some dollars or, help with some land use authority type issues is needed to kind of make that vision move forward. We see also like great ideas coming out of, in organizations like Central Oregon Villages. And so I don't want to put government over that. I want government to be in a place where it is tracking everything that's happening and coming in with resources or land use authority when appropriate to support good things.
Well, the other good news is Friday.
Well, it just tells me that we're all going different directions, and that's what I'm just trying to coordinate. You're talking about one subject, you're talking about the subject, and I'm asking a question, and maybe it's not even clear what I'm asking.
I
So
thought
this
I
is
was
exactly
responding
the
to your
concept.
question.
Well, you just, so government land paid for by government, and I love what you're doing. But if we didn't pay for that, you wouldn't be funded to do what you're doing. If we didn't provide the land, we wouldn't be doing what you're doing. And you're saying smaller government,
And
well,
if we
we're just
didn't
paying
have,
for
and
everything.
if we didn't have
So
all
we're not
these
on the same
people,
page
if
at
we didn't
all.
have all these people in our community doing the hard work of designing a program, figuring out how you're gonna staff it, doing all these other things, then we wouldn't have anything to allocate land or money to. And the solution, and the community would have no homeless solution. So it's
Well,
a
that's
partnership.
not really,
Yeah,
We've
so
had
we're
a
gonna be
homeless
careful here, 'cause we
committee
can go off in
since-
all kinds of directions.
we've had a homeless committee in Deschutes County since 2011. But what I did want to add is I'm also on the local government advisory committee for health and human services. That meeting last month, Dr. Sharon Murin said the numbers in the governor's executive order didn't even properly handle Multnomah County. So I know that's an issue. I'm like, okay, what are we doing? Well, I'm gonna go to that meeting in person this Friday, and I'm hoping that Dr. Murin will be there because she serves people. She's an emergency room doctor, and she sees what people are dealing with. And this has state leaders on it, and it has county commissioners. So it's a really good group, and I know that the message is gonna get back to the governor that we've got to modify where that funding goes. I don't know how it's gonna be done, but surely we can do an amendment to modify it so that it can go to RVs and then it can go to groups that are no longer going to be able to be open because the new funding is going to a new place. That doesn't make any sense. We've got to stand on top of it.
So let me step back a little bit. I have a goal, which is to do a land swap with the Department of State Lands in support of expanding the fairgrounds. That means not having people on that specific 137 acres on the east side of town. And when we do that swap, we're probably not gonna wanna have people on the road called 17th over there. That's what I would like to work towards. Cheyenne Purrington and the Coordinated Response Office, that's kind of the overarching effort here. And this is something that fits in there. So my question just was, wouldn't we want to be starting off in the big picture, understanding how this all fits together and having some leadership from the Coordinated Response Office instead of doing these individually? Because we just heard this, that the mayor came to us from Bend and said, hey, I got a great idea. How about you do this? And this is another effort we're doing. And I just want to coordinate under the response office.
You want to coordinate under the response office with the goal of facilitating the land exchange. Fine.
Well, on the road.
But we need to understand that initiatives like this, while they certainly have synergy and provide great benefit to the goal of getting the 137 acres clear, also these programs also have a huge benefit and impact independent of that goal, just for what they're doing.
I agree with that. Are you trying to say I don't, or
But I mean,
assuming I wouldn't?
it sounded like under the goal of getting the 137 acres cleared, you want to subsume this program under kind of like an initiative that's like targeted at the land exchange. But I'm just saying that that's not, I don't think that's the right way to think about it.
Yeah, so it's hard to talk in this domain still. It just is. It's very interesting. We're all going in different directions. You guys are doing a great job. I absolutely support allowing 6 people on that parcel right now. And for
No,
1
6
year is
RVs.
Six vehicles.
yeah, six state parking spots. So it's not about that at all. I'm just pointing out that, man, we still don't know.
Well, it's
What the
really,
big picture here.
what really happened is that Representative Prop, 2 years ago, set up 4123, where we had 8 communities that were all given the group to lead those communities. Each one of them was, those 8 were given $1 million to spend. So we did that. Well, now the new governor comes in and sets up this whole MAC group. And then some of the people that weren't included have had to petition in order for their counties to get money. I think it went up from 135 million to like 200 million or, so things keep changing, but it is really too bad that now it reminds me of California. We have the Department of Education and then we have a different department for education too. It's really too bad that it wasn't all together, and I think that would make things a bit simpler. Or at least way more effective.
So for this agenda item that was scheduled for 10 minutes, we're getting through it here. There's support for a 1-year extension and going from 4 to 6 state parking spots. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, all 3 of us are on the same page officially, and we'll do them.
So we'll come back next week with an official agenda item for that.
And I'd just like to say, I'm so glad that the county went through the hard deliberations to reach a point where we are supporting the state parking program with this piece of land, and the results speak for themselves.
If you find any more pieces of property in your junk drawer somewhere, please give me a call. We'd be glad to,
You need to talk to that man over there.
Yeah, we need to keep talking about the fairgrounds.
Thank you very much.
So Rick, you left me 2 minutes.
Did we use all your time?
You're good.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're good. We can. We'll be here till spring. Bye. Okay, item number 3, treasury report. Thank you for joining us. Now to the money.
Yeah. How it
I
all
don't know why
works.
everybody left.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pleased to present the February Treasurer's Report. First, I'd like to provide some high-level economic
Yeah, what is your view
insight.
of the world? Yeah.
There's been a few things happening over the last several weeks, so I'll try to be brief. Hard to believe that it was only Friday, March 10th, that the FDIC closed Silicon Valley Bank. And over the weekend, they closed Signature Bank as well. So Silicon Valley Bank was the 16th largest bank in the US, comparable in size to Washington Mutual that was closed in 2008 during the last economic downturn. Basically, it's amazing how quickly that bank unraveled. It happened within a matter of days. Once they basically related to internal asset liability oversight, and really it was probably the casualty of the Fed's policy of dramatically raising rates, which caught their management off guard in terms of how they were managing their internal investment accounts. And then there was a run on the bank, and in one day they lost $42 billion in deposits. So absolutely phenomenal what happened there. It was described as a classic run on the bank. Anyway, there were a number of Silicon Valley Bank clients here in the Bend area. Don't know if you guys were aware of that or not, but they were heavily involved with the tech business, technology companies. I actually, a week ago Monday, spoke with a tech CEO who had the company that she was employed with, their entire deposit relationship, credit cards, line of credit, had access to nothing for about 4 days. really scrambling. So when we think about these things that are happening nationally, they do have an impact locally. And I think it's important to kind of keep that in mind. Last Thursday, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen testified to Congress that the banking crisis is being managed and that the banking system remains sound. Part of this was due to what they invoked was a temporary one-year extension to extend FDIC insurance to cover all deposits of those two failed institutions. So it was a little bit of a stopgap measure to quell the uncertainty that was going on out there.
Way past $250,000.
Oh, yeah.
in some
Yeah,
instances,
typically they'd
yeah.
be capped at 250,000.
But would
For,
it- those who are from Kansas, would they be doing that same thing? And don't forget, Janet Yellen said inflation was transitory. How many millions
Oh,
of
I-
times did she say that word?
Yeah,
So honestly, it's a scary world out there.
it is. And what I'm trying to do is kind of paint the picture of what's happening out there right now. Not to cause alarm, but I think it's good to know or to kind of think back to some of the recent events and then thinking about how we as a county then need to react and respond to some of these situations. But obviously not all politicians are convinced, with many pushing for additional legislative action, which I would imagine, especially with financial oversight to the banking industry, that there's going to be some other things that'll be brewing there. And there's already discussions around maybe increasing capital levels and certainly more oversight into some of the banks that have been identified as being challenged. And then over the weekend, we're all very much aware of what happened with Credit Suisse, which had its own challenges. It was acquired by Swiss rival UBS, and what can best be described as a shotgun marriage. It happened very quickly. The Swiss national government recognized the implications of two banks, actually. They're being described as systemically important to the global financial markets. And there's about 30 banks that are involved in this list. And they recognized that they couldn't let Credit Suisse go down a particular path, and basically arranged to basically force the merger between these two institutions. Goes without saying that we are continuing to monitor certainly our exposure through Deschutes County to the banking industry. I think it'd be helpful to remind our commissioners that all Deschutes County's bank deposits with our bank are collateralized with investment grade securities to protect against loss. So we are not in any way, shape, or form relying upon FDIC insurance. We actually have collateral to support those deposits. And then also the state LGIP fund, the pool, is actually supported by the credit backing of the state of Oregon. So that's just kind of a high level kind of overview of what's happening there. Certainly from an economic standpoint, after the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, many felt that the Fed might take a pause on rate hikes at their next meeting, which is actually the after tomorrow. However, with still strong inflation data, it appears that we'll be looking at another 25 basis point increase when the Fed meeting concludes, which would actually be lower than what the European Central Bank increased their rates last week by 50 basis points. So really, the Fed has very few tools to fight inflation. And really the only tool that they have, a viable tool, is raising short-term interest rates. So there is a lot of conflicting data out there right now that certainly still shows that inflation is still pretty strong. And with essentially what they consider to be full employment, which we're hovering around a 4% unemployment rate, they feel like they can actually err on the side of maybe overcorrecting the market by driving rates higher to effectively slow down the economy. Couple of data points, recent data points. February retail sales actually increased 3% month over month, with food and energy leading the way. And this has been the case over the last several months. The February CPI numbers actually increased 0.4% month over month, and with broad gains across a number of sectors. On the other hand, February PPI inflation, which is actually on the producer side of things, decreased 0.1% month over month. And then adding to the inflationary news is the fact that February housing starts actually grew 9.8% in February, which was the first monthly gain since August of last year. So again, a lot of conflicting data out there right now. I wanted to kind of distill this back to local level, at the regional level, and this would be for Deschutes County. February Beacon report showed Bend's area median price at $660,000, still very strong, but it is much lower than the peak of $773,000 experienced in March of 22. Median price is down to, if you go back and look at the data, we are not seeing the number of $1 million plus homes being sold right now. But what's interesting in that report is nearly half of the sales for last month were actually cash sales. So the people who can afford to buy are buying with cash and not having to go out and finance. So they're not really being impacted by higher mortgage rates right now. The Redmond data, I will share too, that we basically have a 1 month supply of homes currently listed here in Deschutes County. Redmond statistics show a median sales price of $440,000, which is down from $542,000 in August of 22, with about a 1.5 months worth of inventory. And again, with a really tight labor market, the Fed continues to make it very clear that their mandate is to reinstate price stability as their number one concern. Despite already increasing short-term rates 425 basis points since the current tightening started last spring. Anyway, there is still compelling evidence that the fight to curtail inflation will be more drawn out than first expected, but we also appear to be approaching a peak to the rate cycle. So there's a lot of discussion around the fact that we may be getting close to the peak of short-term rates right now. So any questions on the economic side of things?
Do you think there will be a bump in the interest rates?
70% chance right now is what the market's assigning to a 25 basis point increase in the Fed rate. So,
because I think I've heard the last few days, it's not going to happen, or
I
0.5%, 1/4%. So it's,
you know what's
it's
really
a little
interesting is the fear that if they don't raise rates, that could have a negative impact to the economy, because then there's going to maybe even be more concern about really what's happening to our economic situation. So what's the old proverb? Maybe we live in interesting times. Well, we certainly are.
Well, since we are getting all into the grand macroeconomic realm, one thing I'm actually curious about, you might have some perspective on this, Bill.
Sure.
We are trying to cure inflation with 1980s strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly what they did back in Paul back in the day.
Yeah.
And the lesson that they learned was, unrelenting rate hikes to solve inflation. I'm actually curious whether employment and workforce availability were similar back in the 80s, or
Not
whether we're in
anywhere,
a
not
different.
anywhere close to that.
Because I mean, if we didn't have the kind of workforce shortages in the 1980s that we have now, then using 1980s tools to fix the problem may not be the right. They may not be the only tools that we should be thinking about.
Well, I think to that effect, the wage inflation that we're experiencing right now is not transitory as they first thought a couple of years ago. It's more permanent in nature, and it is really driving, kind of the economic situation that we're faced with today. And then also the fact that if they really are targeting a 2% inflation rate, I don't believe that that's achievable either. Kind of my own personal perception there, but I think the expectation for what kind of real inflation we can live with is probably not realistic based on where we are today.
As long as we have such a dire workforce shortage, people are going to keep
it's huge.
People are going to keep driving the wages up, and then
Yeah.
if people can pay more for their quart of milk, they're gonna be paying more for their quart of milk.
Yeah, and how quickly can you change that? I mean, once you start paying that level of wage, you don't just dial it back overnight. So, any other questions on the economy? Okay.
So why don't we have more money than, we don't have any more funding in the state, the LGIP. Right now, we're down to 31 million.
Yeah, and that's part of where we are, and I'm sure Robert will touch
At
on
the end
that.
of the
Just with
cycle.
it's our cash flow cycle that we go through this time of year. And we are in the process of building our short-term liquidity back up, which includes both the bank deposits and our LGIP pool. So that is, and it gives us basically the maximum flexibility in terms of being able to kind of manage through all the interest rate volatility that we're experiencing right now. I will go through a brief summary of our treasurer's report. I want to pass this out as well.
The fact that it's at 3.75 is nice.
Yeah, the rates stay the same. The LGIP rate is the same.
Update?
Yeah, that is an update. When I sent out the report last week, we had a little glitch and I failed to. So the first 2 pages of the report that I sent out are correct. What we picked up was the incorrect monthly investment detail report. So, and that's what I've sent around there. So anyway, I won't really discuss the investments in detail, but I just wanted you to have a copy of that. for your
That's
records.
Silicon Valley Bank in there. Well, just for, is that a corporate, or I mean, could it have been? Would we ever do something with a bank like that?
Well,
Parking $2 million for some interest rate with an organization like that?
corporate bonds and
That's what
commercial
that is,
paper,
yeah.
as long as it meets the risk rating guidance, that would be a consideration.
And then have they met that risk rate guidance ever? I mean, just recently, or?
What,
they just
Silicon
dropped out
Valley
now?
Bank?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been at the highest investment grade, but they would have met our
Yeah, so
investment policy
There would have been a
statement.
possibility that
there
that
would
could
have
have
been
been
a
in the
possibility.
options at some point.
Yeah, and that goes into
Yeah, no, we don't
the
need to get
basic.
it far,
Yeah, I
but
know.
just understanding that is a corporate note that
It-
could have
Yeah.
been in the pool.
But I'll tell you what, the focus on preservation
Yeah.
of capital is so critical, especially now. Not that it would ever not be that case, but you would bypass yield in terms of protecting and preserving capital. So just understand that that's my focus as your treasurer. So
So what about the Credit Suisse New York that you have highlighted?
what's that?
The Credit Suisse New York.
Yeah, that is one that we're watching. Obviously, it's within our investment pool. And with the merger of UBS and Credit Suisse over the weekend, yeah, that investment was made 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Obviously, much
February of
different
21.
situation than where we are right now. Yeah, so, yeah, we are in contact with our investment brokers and, certainly following in that very closely.
So I'll just acknowledge when we put the agenda together, we put 10 and 15 minutes down for all these items. We're just way out today, so.
And I'm trying to
I
play
mean,
catch up a little bit, so.
Yeah, just if it's bad for anybody, let me know. But this is interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So-
That's an interesting
Yeah.
word to use. I would particularly say it was interesting since I do remember.
Challenging, interesting?
Yes, challenging.
Okay.
When prime was 21.5, yeah.
Yeah,
And I was working in one company doing 2 jobs during a recession. And so, what you have to do when things are not going quite like what the company can afford.
mhm. Absolutely. So anyway, high level, our February report, as you can see in the report, our portfolio balance was 319 million at month end, which was a slight increase over the last month, 1.1 million, and a $41.8 million increase year over year. So net investment earnings were $540,000 for the month, which was slightly higher than December. but considerably higher than a year ago, 364,000 higher than a year ago. And this was obviously reflective of a much higher interest rate environment and also growth in the portfolio. So those two factors were driving to in higher monthly investment earnings. All portfolio category balances are well within policy guidelines. As reported last month, the LGIP rate increased from 3.1% in early January to 3.75% at the end of January, and that rate remains unchanged in February. Not sure if we're going to see.
Is it still that today?
Do we what?
Is it still the 3.75
Yeah, it still is
today?
at 3.75.
So they put it up but haven't touched it. Okay.
Yeah. We haven't seen a change there, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of reaction occurs after the Fed action on Wednesday if that does in fact drive short-term rates higher. Average portfolio yield was 2.28%, showing a slight increase from 2.23% the prior month. And also, just so you know, we are now calculating that yield on a weighted average basis, which I believe is a little bit more appropriate method to use for calculating that portfolio yield. The portfolio has a weighted average time to maturity of 1.27 years versus 1.34 years in December, or excuse me, it should be in January. This is a function of greater balances being kept in our short-term funds. And I believe that this short portfolio duration also gives Deschutes County maximum flexibility in this period of rate volatility. So I think that's a good position to be in right now, is let's keep our powder dry. And again, as we continue to build our short-term liquidity, we just want to be careful with the rate volatility that we're seeing out there right now. And that's pretty much where we are. Any questions on the portfolio?
I should say thank you for joining us. Another experienced financial person in the big picture here right now.
Yeah, it's
terms here, but yeah, challenging times instead of just interesting times.
Yeah, they really are. And what happens globally can certainly have an impact locally. Thank you. Thank you.
Questions I have might be more tied to the next item. But, based on all the risk and uncertainty you just described for us, so do you have any thoughts on our investment policy?
We want to go over that, don't we? Yeah.
That's the next.
Sorry,
that's the next one. Yeah, exactly. I didn't even look down at it, but yeah, I knew that was coming. Yeah. So
absolutely.
The investment policy is the next agenda item.
Yeah, and I do have copies of the red line version that I sent out with the packet on Friday. For whatever reason, the PDF did not pick up the red line.
I was looking for it.
Yeah, anyway, I did send it out, but there's a copy, a hard copy that does show the red line version.
There's just two here.
Yeah, just take one copy and pass it on if you wouldn't mind.
Well, and I don't need, so I was in the investment advisory committee. I have a feel for what's going on, the content that we're talking about, so I don't need to read it.
Okay. Any questions on our recommended motion here?
We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Well, so yeah, it was very minimal.
Yeah.
Was two items. One of them was truly like ORS, just updating the number. And what was the other?
To buy or sell securities maybe made more than 14.
Yeah,
business.
Basically the two modifications on page 2, we're deleting one of the ORS that was actually deleted out of the state policy. So we're matching our county policy with the state policy. And then on page 8, we're changing it from 21 calendar days to 14 business days, again, matching the state statute. And so really, there was no compelling reason to have 21 calendar days there. You basically pick up an extra day. And there really wasn't a reason why we weren't matching the state statute directly. And so those were the two recommended changes. We brought that to the attention of our investment advisory committee a couple of weeks ago, and they voted unanimously in favor of that. of this modification. So,
Last year, even 2 years ago, we really grappled with, with Greg, we really grappled with allowing longer term investments, in hopes of, accomplishing higher yields. But I think that after the investment advisory committee talked about a whole lot,
yeah.
they just came back to like, well,
that did not come up during our last investment advisory. And there's really no compelling reason to push the maturity date out because the yields simply aren't there with this inverted yield curve that we're in right now. And shorter and more nimble, I think is really the way to go right now.
So this is the annual investment policy approval with
Yes.
slight modifications.
And with your approval, then we'd like to have Nick have the ability to sign the annual investment policy statement.
For county administrator signature.
Yes.
Or approval.
no other questions, move approval of county administrator signature on revised county investment policy F-.
And the discussion. Seeing that, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner Hale?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
So Bill, I do have a question.
Sure.
When will the Credit Suisse New York, when will we have any idea when that's really okay, that $3 million?
Well, right now, we feel in a much better situation today than we were on Friday.
Oh, yeah, because of UBS.
Yeah, because of
You think they'll
UBS
keep
being the
sponsoring the
backstop.
tennis tournament in the desert then? Because UBS is one of the major sponsors. I'm like thinking they'll have to quit doing that, right?
Yeah, it's a situation that we're monitoring closely.
Well, so this is an amount of money for an amount of time at a certain interest rate. What would, how could they change that? Or would they change that? Only by default would they change
and
that?
that's
So
the
we gotta
situation
assume that all those terms are gonna be agreed to,
Yeah.
unless otherwise
What we've been able
notified.
to ascertain is UBS is acquiring Credit Suisse in an all-stock transaction, so they're purchasing the company. And it's moving forward. It was approved over the weekend. Obviously, how the market digests that information, not scheduled to close until probably later in 2023. These large acquisitions take time. But we are in a much better situation today than we were on Friday.
So
So we don't
besides
have-
the Credit Suisse, is there anything else in our investment package that is risky for default?
There
Good to know.
was a lot of risk embedded in that bank.
I mean, besides Credit Suisse, like with that, there's that, we have a law, that
Is there anything else out in there that's keeping you up at night? I guess he's asking. And
that we should
probably
keep
the
our eye
answer is
on.
gonna be yes, but who knows what, right?
There's a lot of things that.
I mean, some of the stuff, like
monitoring
home
things
loan,
over the weekend.
Yeah,
Just, these are unsettling times right now. And I think it just, behooves us to stay on top of economic news. The situation could be changing daily. The Fed meeting, I think, on Wednesday is going to be telling, especially when they release the meeting minutes from that meeting. I think that will have an impact on market direction with regards to interest rates. But yeah, just sound, prudent financial management is really critical, which we as Deschutes County have always done. That's why we have the investment policy that we do. But things change.
And the credit rating.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, there's like municipal bonds in here, we got US treasuries, do we need to worry as much about like Bank of America as we need to worry about Credit Suisse? Or,
The short answer is
what's scary?
need to remain vigilant and understanding that I would say, and this is the banking industry is in a much better situation today than it was in 2008. Much higher capital levels. There are, especially on the larger banks, I'd say money center banks, top 10 banks in the US are, generally well capitalized. So,
There were some oversights put in place immediately after the financial collapse that have been rolled back since then, right? So
more on the regional side, regional banks, not necessarily the larger financial institutions in the US. Still pretty strict guidelines on regulatory capital, et cetera.
Thank you very much.
Aren't
Next
you
item.
glad you have
Yeah.
this out of retirement?
fun
Do you want me to answer that?
No,
Be a treasurer.
of course not. Thank you, Bill.
It's the hot seat.
Yeah. Next part is finance report for February. Thank you for joining.
Good afternoon. For the record, Robert Tintel, Chief Financial Officer. So you should have your packet in front of you. We'll be going over the financial report for February 2023. Again, these are unaudited numbers, but as we count down the months, we're getting closer to the end of our fiscal year. So we are at about 66.7% through the fiscal year. So that as we're reflecting on the revenues and expenditures, you'll see through the reports, the percentages, so you can see how they compare up through time as we go through there. I'll skip the general fund overview just for a minute. We'll get to that when we go through the packet, talking about the general fund. So the first page I'll look at is page 46, which is the FTE. Start with that count position control summary. For the month of February, we did add 3.5 positions. 2 of those were in the Health Services Department, half an FTE in the DA, and 1 in Victims Assistance Program. One thing you'll notice is for the first time in February, at the bottom of the column there, the unfilled percentage is 9.13%. This is the first time this fiscal year it's been under 10%. So it's a small little victory I think we can celebrate, right? There were some changes, but we've been trying, all departments have been trying to fill their positions, and we know there's a big need across the county there. So I just wanted to highlight that point there.
Except 911 is still really short.
There's still challenges in certain funds, certain departments. Exactly.
But 9.13 is a heck of a lot better than 12.68.
That's right. When we started the fiscal year. Yep. All right, page 47 in your packet is just over of all departments, all funds combined, where are we looking at for our resources? And again, this is page 47. So we're looking at the projection at the end of the fiscal year for our resources to be at 361 million. If you flip the page there on page 48, you get to our requirements. We're projecting to be 412 million, which is less than our budget expenditures. And which after transfers, flipping to page 50 is where will we end up, our projections for the ending fund balance for all funds, all departments combined. We are projecting that to be at $182 million, which is above our $130 million budget. And we'll go through the different funds now that make up a lot of those here. So now we'll start on page 51 for the general fund, and that's where I'll go back to really, it's the cover page for the general fund. That's in your memo, in your packet, page 45. And as you know, the general fund is the discretionary fund of the county, and that's why we focus a lot of times on the general fund, because it's where it has a little more flexibility than the dedicated or restricted funds as well. So our revenue year to date, the general fund is $40 million, or it's at 91.5% of budget. And by comparison, last year, the revenue year to date was 37.1 million, or 91% of budget. So slightly a little higher on the percent and more in the dollar value. As we mentioned, each month is, as we know, the taxes come in November and February of each year. So this does reflect in May. It does reflect the payments as well for those periods. We've collected 97% of our tax revenue to date that we budgeted. And we are projecting to be just a little bit under on our tax revenues by about $90,000 compared to where we budgeted this year. Our expenses year to date in the general fund are 28.7 million or 63.3% of budget. Again, that 63 is under the year to date, so far month to date of 66.7. Last year at this time, we were year to date expenses were 27.3 million and 63.1% of budget, again, just a little bit less as well. You can see the dashboard on that is on page 45 for the general fund, and so luckily the trends are continuing to be favorable at that. Okay, I'll flip to page 52, which is in your packet, which is the juvenile fund 030. A lot of these I'll just highlight the vacancy savings rates on some of these funds. If there's nothing specific with revenues or expenditures, I'll just point out a couple items for you as we go through this quickly. Juvenile, if you notice that in their footnote E, have a vacancy rate of 5.2%. They're projecting there going forward. Again, they're still end of year have a positive variance there. As we move to fund TRT fund 160-170, which is page 53 in your packet. A couple things to highlight on this one is December, January, and February were 3 months in a row where we had decreases over the TRT revenues for the last year. In December, it was down 7.4%, January down 8.1%, and February down 7.9%. First of the year, revenues came in higher, right? So we're still, but the last few months we've seen a trend decrease. So we are a little questionable on where we'll end up at the end of the year, and also as we're looking at the projections for next fiscal year. So we're being mindful of this. Right now, we are projecting a decrease in compared to budget of about $212,000. We'll see how that changes as we get the next couple months in here. So we'll be looking at those numbers as we budget as well. We are still 3.3% ahead of last year, which is a good sign. We used to be a lot higher, but we are 1.3% under budget year to date where we're at. So these numbers are fluctuating there. I want to point that out. Page 54 is ARPA Fund 200. This hasn't changed a whole lot from the last month that we looked at it. I do want to highlight the resource, under resources of revenue, the interest on investments, just a reminder there. So far, year-to-date actuals is $205,000 on interest revenue. We're expecting maybe $316,000 by the end of the year. Just want to highlight that because, again, that is discretionary funding. In ARPA, it hasn't been allocated yet, so that does give a little flexibility to that. We'll see how that continues to grow there. Sheriff's Office, page 56 in your packet, Fund 255, combined here. Their savings has a lot to do to their vacancy savings and other fluctuations they've noted there. They are planning on coming in about $1.7 million total fund balance. The last column there over their projections, $7 million on their budget. So doing a little bit better than they anticipated as well. Page 57 is Health Services Fund, and we have Great Health Services joining us today. So if you do have any very specific, tough questions, this would be your month to ask them, but they'll have an opportunity later to discuss. So the first page on 57 in your package is just an overview of all their funds combined, and they are anticipating to, at this point, to be 9.2 million over their budget projections at this point in time. Yes.
Big number.
Big number. We will be, as we noticed, looking at some of their other funds, and you'll notice next month, I believe, we'll be looking at their revenue projections for this year. They will be. And really looking at the unearned revenue. So maybe looking at the revenue, and this is what we do every year. If there's revenue that they've received and booked this year, but it's unearned, it's really meant for expenditures in future years, they will be pulling those revenues out and applying them to future years so that your revenue matches the year with your expenditure. So there'll be some adjustments from next month. So you'll see that number go down a bit there, but and that's a common thing we usually do at the end of the year. We want to bring that forward to you earlier this year so you have the most up-to-date numbers as we're going through the months. Page 58 is their Health Services Fund, Admin Fund 274. This is a fund at this point, 1.3 million total fund balance over their budget. So they're anticipating to be at about 4 million, their projection at the year. Behavioral health, page 59 in your packet. Still fund 274 there. Right now, they, as of February, anticipating $4 million variance, their fund balance variance there for the year. You will notice that footnote E mentions they have a 10% vacancy rate moving forward. Again, as we know, a lot of our larger departments, bigger funds have been unable to fill their positions, so that vacancy rate continues to be there, and that's where they experience some of their savings. And page 60 is the public health fund. And that's where, again, at this moment, anticipating $3.7 million, ending fund balance over the projection, so a total of 4.5 million compared to the over 800,000 budgeted there. Community development, I believe you get the reports that they send out every month on their activity. This is just highlighting on page 61 of the packet. This is highlighting their revenue anticipation. Again, their year-to-date revenue collection is lower than anticipated due to the decrease in application volume. So that's been adjusted there. And they had their unfilled positions. We've talked about that before. So they're about on target. Ending fund balance is a little less than what they had budgeted by $15,000. So that's still really close given the volatility in their revenues and then cutting their expenditures. Page 62, road fund 325. You'll notice their vacancy rate, footnote E, is 6.8%, and it is what they're anticipating in their projections. Fund 355, adult parole and probation, on page 63. Footnote G, this is where you'll notice they're projecting a higher vacancy rate of 13.9. So you'll see some departments are lower, some are higher. This is one of the higher ones as well. But that's where their savings come in, 794,000. They're anticipating on their personnel savings. So by the time they're getting to the end of the fiscal year, they are thinking their ending fund balance projection will be about 3 million, which is about $1 million more than they anticipated.
Robert, you just hit every one of my green highlighted.
I read your mind. I know.
I was like, wow, did you read this?
Yeah.
Tanner said that they weren't having too much problem with vacancy rates, so he said sworn officers, I guess, not full staff. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect to see that.
Yeah, so we'll see how that changes in the next few months as well. I'll flip past a couple pages, go to page 66, solid waste fund 610. Again, they have some vacancy savings of about 580, their materials and services actually is 582,000 there. So their ending fund balance is over projection by about 246,000. So they'll end up at 800,000 compared to their 556,000 is what they're anticipating at this point. Fair and Expo, Fund 615, page 67. That's another one that has an average vacancy rate of 20%. So a little bit higher on that end as well. But they're still coming in higher than anticipated for their fund balance.
So that's probably just one position.
Yeah,
Did
when
you
you don't
see
have a
on-
lot. Sorry.
On the news, they were talking the farewell tour, people were thinking it wasn't real. And so that's what the news was talking about, and oh yes, it is real, and who's doing it and everything. So they definitely need to get those positions filled though, because they're gonna have a really busy year.
Yes, indeed. I'm gonna flip to page 73 now, which is risk management fund 670. But if you have any questions on any fund, let me know. Again, this is their revenues, resources are on target on their requirements. Again, their general liability is still, they're anticipating, their projection will be a little bit lower than anticipated, yet their workers' compensation is higher. So their budgeted ending fund balance was about $5 million, and they expect to be at 7.6. So about 2.5 million over what they anticipated at this point. We'll see how claims come in the last few months as well. Next page 74, health benefits fund 675. This one, a little bit different story. They're anticipating to be about 300,000 under fund balance from what they had budgeted. But that's still a healthy $8.5 million of their projection for ending fund balance. So it's not a concern at this point, but it is just lower than what they anticipated. 911 Fund 705 and 710 combined on page 75 in your packet. Again, this is another one where their revenues are about on target. Their resources or expenditures, as we know, in their personnel costs are under budget because they haven't been able to fill their position. And their footnote F comments on that. It's a 15% vacancy rate, which is still a very high rate for the tremendous work they do there as well. That is a faster presentation of your financial report for today.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Still this common theme of vacancy savings.
That's what's carried this year so far, and you're right, absolutely been a consistent thing from. Bad for the departments that want to continue to do their great work, but it is a healthy savings for the county to be able to realize those costs. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, so environmental health fees, 2024 budget discussion. We got a couple other items yet today, but this will be the last.
Eric Money for the record, Deschutes County Environmental Health. And I'm joined via Zoom with Tom Kuhn, Public Health Manager, and for really hard budget questions, there's some sophisticated folks, Cheryl Smallman, Ariel Samuel. So I'll give an update on our licensing data. And
hello.
Oh, Tom, can you hear us?
Yes, I don't see myself on the screen yet.
Oh, we can hear you though. We just got the presentation up.
Okay, good.
All right, well, I apologize, Tom Kuhn here. I lost my voice over the weekend recovering from a cold, so I thought it was best that I don't join in person.
That's okay.
Thank you for that thoughtful decision.
Good call. So we'll go through some licensing data, give you an update on our inspection activity, and sort of talk about some trends that we've seen. We'll also share the current state of the fiscal year 24 proposed budget. And Tom, if you could hit the next slide.
I don't have control of it.
Angie. I knew that.
Actually, if we could use my slides, I made some modifications since I sent it this morning.
Okay, here comes control. Maybe.
Okay.
We had a few.
There we go.
We had a few budget updates that we threw in late.
Oh, now you got it. Mute.
All right, sharing screen. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, go ahead and forward it. There was a picture of Jeff Freund and we did a commercial for KTVZ testing somebody's private well. And so we have tested 86 wells so far last year and part of this year. And so we have up to 170 private wells that we're going to test. for free, and we'll test for bacteria and nitrates. So if you know anybody that needs their private well tested, we'll come out and test that and send the sample off to a lab.
So you have open slots for that? People haven't responded fully for the capacity you have?
Yeah, we've tried to get the information out on social media and just telling everybody we know. So tell your friends. But once we hit 170, that well is going to dry up, so to speak.
And then is that testing that a homeowner could do for themselves, or is there any level?
They could. It cost them $70-80
Yeah.
to get. But we just have a one-time $13,000 that our preparedness team sent to a local lab. And it's just been a really cool outreach that we do for folks. We do a lot of work with public water systems, but this was a private well outreach. So shameless plug on that. Next slide, Tom. Just going to talk about the facilities, the numbers that
Hang on one second here.
Oh, okay.
I'm having some technical difficulties on this end.
There we go. Looks good. So these are facilities Deschutes County Environmental Health inspects. And just as a reminder, Department of Agriculture inspects grocery stores, convenience stores, processing firms like Ohana or the Deschutes Brewery over in the Old Mill. So these are facilities that we inspect on our site. So 747 restaurants, and we inspect them twice a year. One side note, I'm doing a pre-opening inspection at 44 North Tavern tomorrow. And so that one will be nice. It'll be nice to put a bow on that one because I know Patty's.
I stopped by there Saturday, and the owners were there, and they actually have a picture, not because I knew it. I think it has my great aunt in it from 1911 Pendleton Roundup with the Cowgirls. So now I have to find out for my family, which one is my great aunt Ella?
Oh.
No, it looks really wonderful inside.
That's great. Well, I can't wait to see it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was very impressed.
We got a coffee shop open down on the Pine too, which is
Roslyn.
I was getting that from all angles.
Right. Yeah, we were happy to get that one opened up as well. And
I mean, especially in today's world, for people to open businesses and,
well, it's volatile.
Yeah,
It's a
and
big
give
risk. You
people
saw Cracker Barrel is closing. Today they closed. And so these things are happening a lot.
Cracker Barrel is closing permanently?
On the north end of town. Yeah, I was thinking KDBZ article that they closed immediately. Another pandemic situation where they just couldn't get their workforce back.
Yeah.
So is In-N-Out gonna go there?
Well, that I don't know.
Well, we need to find that out.
We're always back up.
Doesn't have a drive-through.
Okay, well, maybe Eric, can you figure out how to give them a drive-through?
Well, we're not supposed to encourage or discourage businesses.
Okay,
so
well,
we're
whatever.
supposed to be fairly even on that. The restaurants, it says restaurants downstairs, the cafe downstairs is the restaurant that we license. So benevolent organizations like Bethlehem and Shepherd's House, those are also lumped into this restaurant. So it's a big category. 260 mobile food units. And I'm going to share a slide in a little bit that speaks to the growth of that program. And mobile food units, sometimes people call them taco wagons, food carts, food trailers, food trucks. We license them as mobile food units. And then 270 pools and spas, hotels, motels, resorts that have pools and spas. We go and try to prevent everything from swimmer's edge to an E. coli outbreak or any other sort of health and safety issue that could happen at a pool and a spa. Caldera has got 5 new pools and spas that they're developing down across from Crosswater. So they are keeping our pool plan review gentlemen very busy. And then 135 hotels, motels, recreation parks, campgrounds. We license all of those. 5 new campgrounds came on board up in the East Lake, Newberry, Crater, Paulina, East Lake area. So if there's a campground on public land that's managed by a private company, like a concessionaire, then in Oregon, the local public health authority or environmental health department has to license those and inspect them. 258 temporary restaurants. So whether it's Winterfest, Munch and Music, all the concerts at Hayden Homes Amphitheater, those are the like evening and weekend inspections that we had 258 of those in 2022, and I'll show a disparity or the growth of that as well compared to 2021. And then I mentioned the 185 regulated public water systems. We inspect those every 2 to 5 years. The better they perform, the longer out our inspections are on those. 95 childcare facility inspections, and we anticipate there being a lot more. There's a huge need for more childcare across the United States, but locally as well. And I decided a couple months ago to have one dedicated childcare inspector for a uniform standardized voice. So they don't say, well, Bob didn't tell us that 6 months ago. And it just gives a really nice uniform voice for those facilities. And then we go twice a year and inspect all the cafeterias for the school lunch programs for Redmond, Ben Lapine, and Sisters school districts. Thank you, Tom. Licensure fee revenue, most of our revenues, not all of it, but the biggest majority, if you look at the restaurant fees, and then the third one, or the third one, the mobile food unit fees. And then at the bottom, there's the mobile unit plan review fees and the restaurant plan review fees. Makes up about 71% of our licensed facility revenue. So easily our biggest program there. And
That's a nice one.
We're looking at one of your menus again, Tom. So maybe it's set to like wherever your cursor's floating over or something.
I don't know, he's pretty much a technological wizard, so I don't know
Oh,
what's happening.
I have a copy of the PowerPoint
there you
presentation.
go. It's
Okay.
back.
We're back.
Okay,
Just leave it right there.
Yeah, you can hit the next one, Tom, if you would. So this, hopefully everybody can see this clearly. It shows a dramatic rise in the amount of mobile food unit pods. So if there's more than 3 mobile units at a location, we call it a pod. Ideally, they're hooked to city services like water, sewer, power. That infrastructure is excellent for public health. And so it took us 30 years to get to 100 mobile food units in our county. So we had, in 2013, we had 100 mobile units and 1 pod, the lot over on the west side. Since 2013, not only do we have now 260 mobile units, so in 10 years, we went from 100 to 260 mobile units, but our pods have grown from 1 10 years ago to now we have 29. And there's more on the way. We're reviewing 5 or 6 more in plans. And so it's currently a big time trend. I don't know if it's here to stay, but it certainly seems to be a popular sort of growth that people really enjoy those. Like I said, our big hope is that all of them can be on city services because when people have to conserve water because they only have so much in their RV, then they don't want to wash their hands as much. They don't want to wash, rinse, and sanitize dishes. One example, Spoken Moto didn't have city services. They're moving behind the Campfire Hotel, and they're going to have city services, water, sewer, power. So we consider that a public health win. Next slide, Tom. So some other significant increases in the temporary restaurants, which I mentioned before, like food booths at farmers markets or munching music. In 2021, as we were still dealing with the pandemic, there was only 128 inspections we did. And then last year we did 258. So almost, more than double the amount of weekend work. And that's a great sign because the events are back. And I think it's a pretty healthy sign. The mobile unit plan reviews increased 41%. And that's people saying, I want to open up a food cart in Deschutes County. And so there's really a lot of growth there, as we've kind of already seen. And then overall, for all the food pool lodging licenses that we've issued so far this year, we've issued already 6.4% more licenses for food pool lodging facilities than all of 2022. So every time a restaurant changes hands, it generates another license fee because in Oregon, the licenses don't transfer from one owner to another. Kind of like if you buy a car. Next slide. That's our very own Brody Hodges inspecting a refrigerator. Brody is an inspector, one of our inspectors. He's a full-time food service inspector. And he inspects about 500 restaurants a year. And that could be a routine inspection, it could be a complaint, maybe a pre-opening on a new place, or a re-inspection if a place didn't have a refrigerator working properly. But the FDA says that to meet a really excellent standard, we should only have 280 to 320 inspections per year. So we're flying pretty fast around Deschutes County, getting the food service inspections done. When you're going really fast, you have a tendency to not maybe be as thorough. And we like thorough inspections because we have a lot of guests rolling through, and I like to eat out here and there. I won't tell anybody where, but so when you have inspectors that are doing 500 inspections a year, it could have an impact on public health and public safety. So we're trying to get that number down. But I just like to keep every year showing us how many inspections each inspector has to do in a year. So any questions about that?
I have a quick one, but I don't want to get in front of the board.
Please.
I think,
She's wondering where she should go eat now.
I am, that's my follow-up. I think you noted previously that through the pandemic, environmental health staff were sort of employed in COVID response areas of focus. And because of that, I think we had a few performance measure updates where restaurant inspections were lagging a little bit, and I think you're catching up. Is that 494 reflective of the catch up, or is that reflective of sort of the new normal?
That's reflective of having to meet the contractual obligations that the OHA has set forth.
Okay.
That's if everything is normal. You have this many restaurants and food trucks and commissaries and warehouses and caterers that are supposed to be inspected twice a year. If they all are inspected twice a year, each one of your staff would have 494 inspections. And yes, we were completely redirected to the COVID response and recovery, and our numbers were way down, as we all know from the metrics that you've seen quarterly. But I implemented campaign catch-up last October, and we are well on our way to getting caught up. And the response has been really good from the folks in the field. They're literally happy to see us, which took me aback, but it was great.
They missed you.
Not all of them, but most of them.
That was kind of a cute use of words, ketchup,
Could you spell it?
campaign.
Yeah, hot dog of the month, I kind of put a whole.
What about corn dogs? Yeah.
We went with hot dogs. At this point, I will turn it over to Tom Kuhn for budget status. Tom, take it away.
All right, thanks, Eric, for helping me out there with my voice. Anyways, as of right now, the environmental health budget is estimated to not need additional transient room tax above FY23 levels. And that is assuming that we once again base our fees on consumer price index, which is at 6.4%. Just a little bit of a historical fee examination of what we've done in the past. FY22 and 23, we based fees on CPI, and that's what we're proposing this year also, is to continue doing CPI. It seems like a more uniform and consistent way to make adjustments to the fees, and that's what the majority of the fees that we have in public health are based on CPI, even outside of environmental health. So some of the options we just wanted to put before you, not for a decision, but just to consider if you would have any recommendations on how we should move forward with the fiscal year 24 budget. One is to adjust fees with CPI, and we'll allocate, or you can allocate TRT at the FY23 level, which was $418,000. So we can continue status quo services as is with a 6.4% fee increase. Another option could be increase fees by 37% across the board, and then provide no transient room tax or county general fund. So if someone said, hey, we would like the fees to basically cover the services, that's where the fees would have to be at in order to make that work. It would be a 37% increase, which obviously is quite large. And then another option consider would be if we increased fees by, let's say, 10%, that could reduce TRT by $50,000. Or we could increase the fees by 10% and keep the TRT levels the same and use some of that additional funding to offset increased expenses in future years, like next fiscal year budget process, where at that point, we will most assuredly be needing additional TRT to cover the budget. So just want to give some different things to consider and see if you had any guidance or recommendations for us as we plan for the budget process.
I know in years past, we've kind of done a survey around the state a little bit for fees to understand the scope of what we're talking about. And, I think of a food cart, if I was gonna get motivated to open up Tony's Tacos or Tony's Pizza or something like that. $250 or $500, or I mean, what are the numbers that we're talking about for these facilities?
Yeah, good question. Mobile food units right now, if you wanted to do Tony's Tacos and if you were cooking raw ground beef, that would be a class 4. And so right now that fee is $519. In Washington County, it would be $856. So we're down there on mobile food unit licenses. We are 7th in the state on our fees. That would go for us. It would go up to $552 for Tony's Tacos from 519 with a 6.4%. So we run those comparisons as well to kind of see how we're gauging with other counties in Oregon.
So then I always wonder what does that eat out tourism opportunity look like? As in, the world's changing, the interest, inflation, everything is happening. Is that gonna be good for eating out or not? I'm not justifying more eating out right now, that's for sure. Which means we have less activity.
Well, I think about that too, because of if there's a lot more restaurants coming on board, food trucks, clearly there's a demand that needs to be met, and it just kind of goes with our tourism and our growth in population.
But I do think, this year is going to be a big tourism summer. It just feels like last year we were like, I think we're over COVID, but this year, come on now, so I can just see it's going to be big this summer, no matter what people do.
But I think the TRT is down in the last 3 months.
Just in activities, all activities. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I've been very surprised that with so much snow, with so many people who like to come here and play in the snow, that TRT's been down in the last couple of months. So
Well, I met another American on Saturday that was working 2 jobs. So, it's really a tough time out there for a lot of people, and listening to like Sherry Hill talk about their restaurant, it's busy from like 6 to 7:30, during the week, and Saturday is really booked, but there is definitely people are making their choices. If you go out to lunch at all, I see more empty tables now. I see that people are making a choice, and I don't know. I'm not sure how big summer is gonna be.
I don't know whether summer's gonna be big or not, but the fact that we're seeing these year after year increases in total food carts and restaurants indicates that there's still a lot of people who think that the risk of, the entrepreneurial risk of starting a business is attractive. So, we have to be able to keep up with that.
Well, it only took Tavern 44 or Brand 43 years. So, it did look really fabulous. And I'm going like, okay, guys, what kind of pizzas are you having? Because I know Jeff Hines loves to get to-go food from there, because it's like the closest things for that end of the county. So you hope that it will work. Then again, what did you say? Cracker Barrel had to close down? Was that a national thing? Were they shutting down a lot of places already?
Just this one that I read about, and they wanted to have, in 99 when they opened, they wanted to have 175 part-time or full-time employees. And at the end, today, when they closed, they just had 29 on the payroll. So workforce, it's a problem across so many sectors.
Right. I know a lot of places are not open like certain days now
Yeah.
because they just, if you're only having so many people working, you just cannot work them to death. You know, you've got to give them some time off.
Well, and I would lean towards increasing fees by that 10%, the third bullet item there, and we can talk about TRT or not, just knowing that, because I've been in this conversation a few times over the years now, but this is it, we need to build it in. We want the service level to be there. Everybody knows things are going up, and I mean, I'm an advocate for the business owner and the taxpayer, obviously, this is kind of that moment.
I would support 10% as well.
And I would support the 6.4, so I guess I'll be the only one.
Well, it's just, some guidance to get the budget going here
I
this
think
year.
people are, especially in the food service industry where food costs are still going up, there's still inflation there. And we're gonna put a 10% increase on them. I don't think that's right in today's world.
Well, so how about we start off, so this is gonna be conversation into our budget committees, budget meetings anyway, so this is just a starting point. Start off by showing support for that 10% with your comments included, and then.
Please put them in the minutes.
Yeah. And then for the TRT, I don't know if we need to make that decision today, it's kind of figure out what it looks like during the budget.
I think to balance their budget, health services would need to reflect a transfer in if they're only going to increase
So
fees
you
by
want that guidance
10%.
now,
Otherwise, they'll be presenting about a budget.
otherwise it'll be
Carol,
in there,
yeah.
you'll keep it.
Well, we can build it, however,
Yeah, I
if we could
understand.
have some guidance, that's.
So version 1 with, reduction of TRT to version 1. Then
Okay.
point out the fact that, we did this year, this is our starting point from this discussion today. Okay, good, so. Here you go. Thank you, great to see you, thanks for doing what you do out there.
Yeah, good to talk to you guys. Great to see you.
Yeah.
I
In
mean,
person.
In person.
over the last 2 years, it seems like we were catching up a little bit with kind of the ratio of inspectors to the amount of inspections they had to do, and then maybe we're falling behind again.
It's
And I
because
mean,
of the
it's
growth.
Because of the growth,
Yeah.
so I mean, we have to.
Yeah, so then it's, when does that next FTE justified? So that's the
Yeah.
next step, that's a big one though, right?
That is a big one because it's where you're gonna find.
Because the growth doesn't cover that much of the.
Right. You need the operating funds
Operational costs
to get
go
there.
up, and so that's a discussion that I'm thinking about daily.
But see, we've got the empty restaurant right by Dutch Brothers and Sisters and nobody's been in there for a long time. It's a really nice building.
Yeah, the old Papa Andrea's, it's been several things, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
So,
a different world.
well, somebody will go in there.
But the net number of restaurants and food carts is going up.
Yeah, it's on the rise. Well, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Eric.
you.
Thank you, commissioners.
I'm glad you
You
stayed home.
take care of
Tom.
yourself, yeah, no, he's
You
in
need
his
some-
office, it looks
You
like.
need some tea and some honey and lemon.
Yeah, I've been doing all that. I don't know what happened.
Uh-oh.
So,
Other items at this time, and then we do have 2 executive sessions.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not for today, okay, good.
I was gonna say there's,
March,
okay.
okay, good, don't even worry about that then.
We are gonna have third executive session.
Oh, it's gonna be busy on Wednesday. So just other items, good?
I can start with,
Oh, yeah.
I had a meeting with solid waste staff and the BLM on Friday. And we're essentially trying to feel out the BLM to understand of the potential BLM land transfer or land conveyance opportunities that we've put out there so far. Which of them would work best for the BLM, and they're not really able to comment in that way, but they can tell us about which actions they expected to get more, essentially get more public comments opposed to, and it was based on what they knew. They actually thought that the site that's between Bend and Redmond along Highway 97 and east of the railroad tracks was the site that would have the least, the least negative comments back from the broader public. They also said if we were really concerned about commenters from, like nationally, there are people, at the national level who are concerned about land leaving the public domain and going into, being transferred to local governments or private interests. And they said if we were really concerned about that, one thing we could do would be to set up some kind of an exchange where, hey, you're taking this BLM land, but we're giving something else. That would make it, a lot harder for people who are concerned about land in the public domain to complain about. Those are some of the high level things from that meeting. They described their Recreation and Public Purpose Act lease application process. And it sounds like it's pretty lengthy. It could take as long as 6 years. But they said that essentially an act of Congress can basically eliminate a whole bunch of that process and proceed fairly quickly. As they've seen, in their experience, they've had to do congressionally directed land conveyances, but happen quite fast. So that's a little bit of input for us. If we're interested in pursuing that property, then it sounds like the best thing to do would be to work the congressional approach pretty hard, try and get our full congressional delegation to line up and go pretty quickly. He also said that I guess one other thing that came up during that meeting was if we went the traditional Recreation and Public Purpose Act lease application process, the formal process, non-congressional, if that lease is granted and then it's converted to a transfer, their cost, their charge was $15 an acre. Chad popped out of his head because he thought that was a pretty good deal. Conceivably, with a conveyance, congressionally directed conveyance, there doesn't have to be any dollar transfer. So great information. So that is, something in terms of the cost of moving forward with our new solid waste facility. That's something to consider as well.
I was able to mention that topic to Congressman Chavez DeRiver on Saturday. It was here Saturday afternoon. She was in town, so didn't have details per se, but I sure brought the topic up with her, so she heard on it from a personal.
We're trying to make sure that Jen Patterson has all the information, the maps, the background documents, and all that stuff. So whenever you want to access that.
I think she sent out, it was just to me because I asked her. I think she did put some of that in the forwarded to us.
Great.
Okay, anything else? Well, yeah, so we haven't seen you since the fire stuff in Klamath, right? So you spoke on Thursday?
Yeah.
What was that topic?
They were interested in understanding community fatigue with wildfire resiliency, community wildfire protection work. 30-year story of the Aubrey Hall, the Skeleton Fire, and how he was very motivated and very focused for decades. And now, in my opinion, people are getting a little bit fatigued now, and it means that they're less tolerant of fire resilient building code, new fire resilient building code requirements. They're less tolerant of trail closures, prescribed fire smoke in the air. They're less tolerant of a variety of things. And it's harder to get people to accept inconveniences and constraints that are necessary to protect our community from wildfire.
Saturday was a beautiful day, is that what today? So yeah, I cleaned needles out of my gutters on Saturday. Here we go, put that in the minutes.
Oh, please do.
Well, it was a nice day to be able to do that.
It was
So-
only like 60 degrees.
Last
Oh my gosh.
Monday, so we weren't together since then, I guess. So last Monday night, I was able to go testify in front of the Joint Committee on Semiconductors in support of Redmond's land. There's the industrial land that's already in the UGB for this purpose. Because there's the bill that they're gonna give the governor all kinds of authority just to point somewhere and say, let's use that land. So I guess the same messages from Redmond and from Medford too. They've been doing a 10-year plan, industrial land, UGB, making sure utilities are stubbed out, getting ready, setting the table. And now the legislature's talking about just superseding an emergency in Washington County, which is frustrating for some people in rural states. Also, just for your information, finance came and there was a form, Whitney and I got involved with this, capital outlay expenditure authorization form. And this is kind of a budget thing that I was asked to sign, and it's like, well, I've never done that before, so I just wanted you guys to hear about this. And it wasn't much other than taking the $1 million line item for furniture and fixtures from health and breaking it into a couple items. So furniture and fixtures, remodel, and tech improvement. So they just kind of made subcategories of it. So I don't know if it was a budget change or budget clarification.
It was incorrectly budgeted in materials and services, and this moved it over into capital outlay. So it's just sort of, the funds were budgeted, it's just kind of where they fall, and finance was being pretty precise in following our procedures, which is great. So
Cool.
that required a signature.
They have a form with the county commissioner approval of over 25,000, so that's why they came to me. So as I say, I just never meant.
So what project was it?
So the North
Oh,
County
nice.
Redmond buildings for health, and they had budgeted $1 million, they just need to spend it in 3 different pieces, it's just a way to change it. And those are the 2 items. And then I did attend the Wednesday virtual tour of the Klamath, so the big snowstorm, huge, wet, sloppy snowstorm on Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, it was frozen, crunchy ice everywhere with snow. So they canceled the van tour with the WIFLIC, Wildfire Leadership Council. But it was a great room full of people at the Running Y, so we were there. I was there from 7:30 or so in the morning until 4:30.
We stayed there the first weekend it opened, whenever that was. We had
That was the first time I had ever been.
Yeah, we went there, of course, it was a golf vacation with the boys, but no, it was amazing, it was really nice, we had a brand new house, nobody ever stayed there, oh, it's getting nervous. So, yeah, nice place.
But yeah, good camaraderie in the room, a lot of education, learning, people going back and forth, talking about all kinds of subjects.
I was disappointed we didn't get to go see the bootleg fire.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I went.
They took us on a virtual.
Oh, I went to the Bend Airport on Thursday and it actually was a spectacular day. You could see like 12 mountains, I think, out there. It was unbelievable. And of course, Tracy took me all over the place. And I would never want to do that on a day that was cloudy because there was so much activity, but it was really terrific. And then
You
also.
went flying?
No, we just drove around in her
Oh,
car with the lights flashing.
Because I know she's a pilot, I thought she was.
Yeah, well, yes.
She said that to me, she's like, if you want to go up sometime, just let me
Oh,
know.
yes. Anyway, I got to see everybody's hangar. But the amazing thing about Tracy is that her son is a pediatric cardiologist at Stanford University. So she showed me his picture. And yeah, and then the restaurant there needs to reopen because they have all these amazing people that come in and out, but there were only 2 people running that restaurant and it closed. So it would be really, be really nice if that, you know, had somebody that wanted to start a business there.
I know,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
I know, it's a great spot, great views, it was terrific. So anyway, that was my Thursday fun. Then I went to Sun River. They had an art program that they're supporting because there's so much behavioral health issues with our kids. And a major artist that had been in Seattle and LA is working on this program. So it was great to get to go to that and see what they can do. And I told them to apply for funding. And so I've got my brochure to give to Stephanie when she gets back.
Anything else?
Just the email that Nick had sent about the Ready Legislative Committee. I think Steve Curley had reached out about.
So yeah, I guess the message is if I'm not on the board, I'm not part of the committee system, so it's all you then.
I was there, I was at least on the phone.
Yeah,
last week,
and it's just more clear for those guys.
this week, since the, sounds like everyone's gonna be at the Ready luncheon.
So that's real clear. And I did attend the Sun River Lafayette Economic Development remotely last Tuesday also, so that's good conversation and bring anything to share content wise, but it was, we will have that April 11th is the sled lunch in the Great Hall. So I think we got a table for that already, 2 tables of 6. Sure, we're there.
One legislative thing I wanted to mention, when there was just that discussion about the governor's homelessness package that went to the legislature. In my opinion, we weren't weighing in early enough to actually influence the content of it. I do think that Mark Owens and Ken Helm are very serious about getting a drought package, water and drought package through the legislature this year. And there's a lot of pieces to that. Mark in his most recent constituent email, there's a couple of links to check out what was in that drought package, and I think it's very relevant to Deschutes County. So then it'd be something worth us actually taking a serious look at, trying to figure out how it applies to us or doesn't apply to us, what would be beneficial and and showing up and being involved in supporting in a supporting the package in a way that got us changes that we're interested in.
So to do that, I mean, we can either do another meeting or under other items. I mean, like right now, this is the time if we want to schedule on Wednesday, 20 minutes or a half hour to focus on that. So we understand what, because I haven't done my homework on that, so I could go do some homework. But I mean, if you want to come in with, an analysis of parts of it that really matter for us and share it with us, and we say, yes, this is what we're advocating. Because right now, it's a drought package. I don't know.
I mean, we could get a representative on staff for Harmony Bright to pop in and give us a primer or something like that. I'm not the right person to give you an overview of the package. I have some understanding of some of the parts of it, but it'd be better to have somebody from the legislature to walk us through it if we're interested.
You'll see, you were there at that meeting or on Zoom or whatever. You'll see there was a lot of dissension in that meeting on one of his packages. And he left, and so I'm not quite sure we should have come in. I do know people are in DC this week talking about water. People from Jefferson County that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I mean, what the Deschutes Basin needs to be asking for from Congress is different than what we need to be asking the state legislature from Congress. We need money to do help, I think, with those kinds of things, but from the state legislature, the state is the body that, kind of regulates information about water. What do we know about how much there is and who has rights to it, and, is it out over allocated and stuff like that, so. Yeah, just saying. The bill that we discussed at AOC was maybe one out of probably 11 or 12 bills that are part of that package, that draft package. And that's something that we can do. If we don't like pieces of it, we can say we like this, this, and this, but we have heartburn over this specific piece. Giving them that feedback early in the process gives them the opportunity to tailor the bill so it best suits our region.
Well, and I mean, education and knowledge is not gonna be bad in this situation, so how about we, this is our work session now, how about we offer, if Harmony's available, or if somebody wants to speak on the subject, that we could either schedule around their availability or ask them to meet on Wednesday sometime. So leave it open for that, because, so today's Monday, so then if it's tomorrow, Wednesday, or Thursday.
I mean,
We could do Zoom.
It may not be that time sensitive, it could be like next week or the week after, but I actually don't know whether it's time sensitive or not, but.
Well, it'd be better to get ahead of the game instead of behind.
So there's support for looking for an opportunity to schedule a legislative meeting, either add it to an agenda item or a special meeting.
Okay, that sounds great. I'll work with
that.
That's good, and I mean, if we scheduled it out, then we could, invite the irrigation districts and the Deschutes River Conservancy and other entities. If you wanna come watch the presentation,
Or
give us feedback afterwards.
It could be the Board of Commissioners setting up this, legislative update and roundtable, because I mean, we'd be in session, but anybody at the table that's in the, collaboratives or market folks. Just because it'd be fully educational, because then we can always step back as the Board of Commissioners and say, we support this or that. Part of it.
And just bringing the information to the region is pretty valuable in and of itself, right?
So I was thinking this week or something, because I know that if it's a drought package and now we're going into the second part of the session where other stuff is dropped off, I can't imagine, and you're saying we need to get involved early. Now you're saying it doesn't matter how fast, but I'm thinking, I thought it was tomorrow.
I mean, I think early is good, but having the involvement of irrigation districts and others when we're hearing about the stuff is actually really helpful. Monday or Wednesday next week doesn't seem.
Yeah, that's fine. So
So my neighbor was thrilled, I have him pulling together all the costs, all the damage of the elk, the hundreds of elk that have been going through his one ranch. So hopefully that bill will have some life, that committee, and we'll see.
Well, we've got
Beautiful, but destructive, I guess.
the starting point for the wolf depredation committee and the planning commission. So I know that there was asks for us to just email back the kind of first cut priorities.
Yes.
I
have that on my desk.
Good, because we've all heard about that. Anything else?